Welcome back on diynonmod. Today I want to propose you a video about...
In this video we talk about the rules for the Soulblight Gavelords 2023, and remember that in the description you can find the timeline where you can go to see about the rules that you are interested about, so that you can focus. And about instead the part about the background, you can find everything in another video. So I create a playlist where you can find all the rules, because in the time will be the updating about points, about the rules and so on, and then you can find everything there, so that you are sure that everything will be what you need to know and you have a referral about. So eventually remember to see the videos, the new ones that are related about the Soulblight Gavelords.
About the battle traits, we have a lot of confirmation of what we see in the previous Battletome, but we have also some battle traits that were in the previous Battletome that has been changed in an important way. Subtle, but really important. About the Cursed Bloodline are the same, so we are Legion of Blood, Legion Knight, Avengorii, Kastelai and Virkos. But about this I'll talk more in detail later, because I want to treat each of them more accurately. Then we have the I'm Quite Dead, that it's almost the same that before, but it's a little different. After territories are determined, you can pick up to 2 points within your territory and up to 2 points anywhere on the battlefield outside your territory to be grave site. Each grave site must be more than 1 inch from all terrain features and objectives. If both players can set up grave tiles at the same time, or if one player can set up faction terrain feature at the same time as the terrain player can set up the grave sites, they must roll off and the winner choose who set up their faction terrain feature or grave site first. Remember that this can be quite important, because it could be something related about forbidding the opponent to set up its terrain feature. And even if technically it should not be about the dimension, because there should be points, these grave sites, I want to remember you that I made some conversion about creating them, because I love such things. So I created my grave site markets, and eventually I suggest you to use anyway something to represent more than a single coin or so on, to make it anyway. Remember that technically are passable, so you should not use something that completely forbid the move on it. At least make that you can remove, and so you have 2 steps. So that you have a marker under that it's a flat one, and then you can put a marker, a volumetric one, to make it more understandable. Then we had that during deployment, instead of setting up a Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up in the grave as a reserve unit. You can set up 1 unit in the grave for each unit you have set up on the battlefield, so half and half. At the end of your movement phase, you can set up 1 or more reserve unit in the grave on the battlefield, wholly within 12 inch of a grave site and more than 9 inch from all enemy units. So this part has not changed quite a lot, but remember that the summonable is applied also to other things, and not only, I can say, the basic unit as before, but we'll see better later. So here it's quite important, because it's a way to make them arrive, and it could be good to make eventually something related about an ambush or conquer objectives, so that you can really play a lot about this and decide how to play and where to play with the objectives. It's the grave site. It's really quite amazing that you have to remember. So you have endless legions that at the end of your movement phase, you can pick 1 friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit. Remember, summonable unit, but not necessarily battle line or so on, that has been destroyed, and roll a dice. Add 1 to the roll if it's your movement phase. So remember that you can do also in the one of the enemy. If you pick a summonable unit that is not a hero, on a 4+, a new replacement unit with half of the models of that unit that was destroyed, rounding up, is added to your army. That unit must be set up wholly within 12 inch of a friendly summonable Gravelords hero or grave site, and more than 3 inch from all enemy units. Remember that now you have also the grave site or the hero, so you don't have the combination of both of them at the same time, better if they are both. And remember that it's more than 3 inch, so not in close combat, but you can be closer than an inch. So you can really play a lot to create a sort of shield walls or so on to your units that you don't want that the enemy try to charge and so on. So they are really quite nice, these ones. And it cannot attempt a charge or make a pile-in move in the same turn. So this is useful because there are anyway some units that can make a pile-in more than 3 inch. So it's something that it's bad that is specified. So this makes that it's more useful to make eventually a comeback in the enemy turn, because you don't have the problem about not being able to charge. Each destroy unit cannot be replaced more than once, so replacement units cannot be the same be replacement again. So remember that you do such once and half the mod. Still quite amazing, because for example the zombies you can try then to make them come back to full force, because they can replenish even more than their own size of the unit. Then remember that if you pick a summable hero, because now there are summable heroes, on a 4+, you can set up that hero wholly within 12 inch of a friendly Soulblight Gravelords hero or Graveside, again, more than 3 inch from all enemy units and with 3 wounds allocated to it. So eventually remember that you have to heal it. The hero cannot attempt a charge or make a pile-in move in the same turn, and you cannot pick the same hero to benefit from this ability more than once per battle. Here I'm quite curious about what will happen about having the model with an artifact or with for example, being the general, because technically it should be a copy, so have the things, but not be anymore the general. I'm quite curious about this, and so I hope that there will be eventually a fact that will explain this, but still it's quite nice because it means that you can recover your own characters and have in such a way to make also have the continuing casting command ability in other turns, obviously, because they come back in the moment, so the hero phase is yet past, but anyway, quite nice. In your hero phase, we had then also the Deathly Invocation, that makes that in your hero phase you can pick up to 3 friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable units, summonable again, so again can be both also the heroes, wholly within 12 inch of a friendly Soulblight Gravelords hero, and you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit, so it means that technically a Soulblight Gravelords hero that is summonable can heal itself, notice it, or if no wounds has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain mod to that have a combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. Add 1 to the number of slain mods made returned to that unit if it is wholly within 12 inch of a graveside. You cannot pick the same unit to benefit from this ability more than once per phase. At least now you don't have to be with quite limited, so you gain also something quite interesting if you have both the Soulblight Gravelords hero and the graveside, so it's even much better to understand where to place these graveside, because they are really quite intriguing, and remember that you have to play quite good the Unquiet Dead rules, so there is quite a lot. Moreover, because it makes return slain mods, not wounds, but slain mods, so having even more comeback, it's quite nice. And then we have also that the Deathless Minions is still available, so we have that friendly Soulblight Gavelords unit as a ward of 6 as base. It's common for all the armies, but still it's something that you have to remember because it's really useful, so it's something that it's quite amazing. So this can make that you have more flexibility than before, even having technically the same battle traits that before. About the spell lores, we have 2 different spell lores available. The first one is about the lore of the vampires, that it's for the vampire wizard and including unique units only, about vampires obviously. The second one is about the lore of the mages, including the unique units for the death mages too. So you had to choose based on the keyword that you have, which one you have. Obviously, if you are a wizard, you are going to refer to. So now we go to see about such one, starting from the Lord of the Vampires, where we have Soulblight as first. That is a spell that has casting value of 6 and a range of 24 inch. If successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster until your next hero phase. If that unit make a charge move, roll a number of dice equal to the charge roll for that charge move. For each 4+, that unit suffer 1 mortal wound. And if the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not unbound, you can pick 2 different enemy units within range instead of 1. About the 9+, you can not forget but not count on it, because it depends by the casting rolls. If you are lucky that you have such spell on 9+, it's much better, obviously, but otherwise it's applied and enjoyable if it happens, but remember that you have to count the first one, and it's the most important one, because based on the amount of roll that it charges, it can be that you can even try to kill all the units themselves, or try at least to debilitate them, so it's really quite important. Then we have Wild Transference, that is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 9 inch, so it's quite few as range. Is successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster, roll a number of dice equal to that unit's wound characteristic. For each 5+, that unit suffer 1 mortal wound, and you can heal 1 wound allocated to the caster. If the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not abound, obviously, the target suffers 1 mortal wound, and you can heal 1 wound allocated to the caster for each 4+ instead of 5+. So you can think, obviously, that if you are able, it's a 5+. But being able to do this with a 4+ is much better. So it's a great improvement that I suggest you eventually to hope to happen, because can be a way to inflict more mortal wounds to the opponent, eventually heal yourself, and so maybe if you have damage table, even to replenish your wounds, that it's always nice. And then we have Spirit Gate, that is a spell that has casting value of 7. If successfully cast, each enemy unit on the battlefield suffer 1 mortal wound. Each enemy unit on the battlefield. It's crazy, this one. If the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not unbound, after the effect of this spell has been resolved, you can immediately resolve the effect of this spell for a second time. So each unit on the battlefield, if you are able to cast with a 9+, suffer 2 mortal wounds. So it means that you can eventually kill completing models that have 2 wounds, or eventually you can try also to finish independently that are on the battlefield, eventually heroes that are low wounds or so on. So it's quite amazing, this one, because it's simply something that is generic. It's wonderful. It's something that really, it's the first spell that I should take about the vampires, even before the soul pack itself, because this is something that for sure you must try to launch and to make it successful. Even if it's not the 9+, it's amazing, but if you reach the 9+, even better. And I've had the lore of the mages. This has as first spell the Feeding Figure, that is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 18 inch. It successfully casts, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. Subtract 1 from the attack characteristic of that unit melee weapons to a minimum of 1 until your next hero phase. If the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+ and the spell is not unbound, subtract 2 from the attack statistic instead of 1 to a minimum of 1. This is quite nice, but you have to try to pick units that have really quite a lot of attacks for each model, because otherwise it's quite useless. Moreover, if you are able to cast that 9+, and you can't know beforehand, so it's not great, but not so great. So you have always to have in mind to think about having only 1, and eventually if you are able to gain a 2+, it's a bonus. Then you have Prison of Grief, that is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12 inches, so quite small. If successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. Until your next hero phase, the Strike Last effect applies to that unit. If the modified casting roll for the spell is 9+, and this spell is not about, obviously, the range for this spell is 24 inch instead of 12 inch. This, I don't like this 9+ effect, because you can't plan before. It's something that you should change your plans before, because the casting has been receiving a certain amount of value. It's not fair, because if I want to cast this spell, it's because I need on a unit that is within 12 inch. Not that I had to hope to cast so that I can reach a unit further than this amount. So this is something that I don't like. It's useful, but I don't like. Then you have Waste Away, that is a spell with a casting value of 6 and a range of 18 inch. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. Until your next hero phase, subtract 1 from the wound roll for attacks made with melee weapon by that unit, and subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that unit melee weapon to a minimum of 1. If the unmodified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not unbound, you can pick 2 different units within range instead of 1. And this is quite nice instead, because it's within established range. You can make double effect, because you can make the wounding worse and the damage worse. So even if the damage is 1, you can make worsen the wounding because you need it. Or anyway, it's something that it's quite nice. And if you are able to have a 9+, so you have the 2 units. So this is within a certain range that it's plausible, so it's acceptable, and you have a quite nice effect. This is the best of the previous 2 spells that are available. So I think that it's the most solid about such ones, free ones that are available. And then we can start with the legends of the bloodlines of the vampires, the Soulblight Gavelords. Remember that these are divided in battle traits, command traits, and artifact of power. And the battle traits and so on are related about being added to the normal ones that are for the Soulblight Gravelords or for the general army, for example, for the command traits and the artifact of power that are available. So remember about this. And the first one that we see is the Legion of Blood. This has battle traits, 2 battle traits that are really quite important. The first one is Unparalleled Expertise. If a friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero is within 3 inch of an enemy unit, it is bloodthirsty. If a friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero is more than 3 inch from all enemy units, it is empowered. So, if it is bloodthirsty, so within 3 inch of any enemy unit, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by the unit that is bloodthirsty. This, it means all the type of attacks that unit has, because it considers the unit, not the part of the vampire, the rider, so, but all the attacks, so pay attention. The other one is that if you are more than 3 inches, so it is empowered, add 1 to the casting, dispelling, and unbinding roll for a unit that is empowered. So it means that you can apply quite a lot more power in the magic, so it's really quite interesting. Moreover, if you think that the first one, it's useful because it makes really better the improvement about going against the enemy. If you think about instead casting the spells and so on, it's much more heavy as mage, so it's really quite intriguing because a vampire, it's a mix and gain quite a lot. Moreover, you have to remember that this it's added to every other option that you can gain from other spells and so on that can improve also such type of bonuses, so it's really quite intriguing. The second one is the Come of Lulamia, that it's about the action. So this, at the start of the hero phase, you can carry out one of the heroic action that we see. Now, we have friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero, instead of any other heroic action that you can carry out with that hero. So, we have Premeditated Bloodshed, pick one friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero. Until the end of this turn, ward rolls cannot be made for wounds and mortal wounds caused by the attacks made by this hero. And pay attention, because it doesn't talk about being only melee ones, but all wounds and mortal wounds. So magic, shooting, combat. So it's really quite interesting, this one. And it can be applied quite interesting in close combat, because you remember that you had the bloodthirsty of the first battle trait, the simple unparalleled expertise, so you can gain quite a lot of options. So this, ignoring the words, it's really quite useful. If you think about it, means that you can go against the enemy. If you are able to, for example, have a big hand or so on, you can ignore the armor of the opponent and still ignore the words of it, so make the wounds pass easier. Then we have the other option, that it's Immortal Majesty. Pick one friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero. Until the end of this turn, your opponent must spend 2 command points instead of 1 to use all-out defense and ignore presence commands to enemy units within 12 inches of this hero. So it means that it's like having spells or ability or so on available without any problem, and the range, it's not so big, but it's not small, and mainly it means that if you send the opponent against or in the range of such hero, it's really quite interesting, because it means that being able to double the amount of command points required, it means that the opponent has to save such amount of command points, not use for other things, or that he have to choose about which one to use, because otherwise it has the problem that it doesn't have maybe enough command points to cover, for example, the amount related about such ones. So it's really quite interesting, and maybe not used often, but it's really quite intriguing to use as an action for your hero, and then use it appropriately. And then had the Legend of Blood command trait. I can't dispute that I don't like so much these ones, because they are quite good, but they are more related about hunting the opponent units than to improve really the game itself. But anyway, it could be interesting, but you have to pay attention about which unit you're going to target, because we have 3 command traits available. The first one, Tailored Downfall. After deployment, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick one enemy hero on the battlefield, so you have to pay attention that the hero that you're interested about, it's not to arrive from a reserve lately, so that it's not when it has to start on the battlefield. The strike last effect applied to that unit while it is within 3 inches of the general, so the general has to be in close combat and has to hunt, literally, that specific hero. Then you have the Game Hunter. After deployment, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick one enemy monster that is not a hero. The attack characteristic of that unit melee weapons is 1, while it is within 3 inches of this genre. This is quite interesting because it's a way to hunt literally the monsters, but you have to be within 3 inches of it. The next fact is that, at least in close combat with that hero, it's likely that it will be not so heavy to battle against, because it will be having the attacks related about only one attack for each type of attack that it has, so it's more comfortable, but you have to pay quite a lot of attention. The next one is Doomed Minions. After deployment, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick up D3 to D3 enemy units that are not heroes or monsters. Attacks made with melee weapon that target that unit score a hit on a modified hit roll of 2+, while that unit is within 3 inches of this genre. So this is quite interesting because it refers about attacks that target units while the genre is within 3 inches. So you have to have the genre within 3 inches, but you don't have the problem about melee weapons about other units that attack those same units, and those units has not to be heroes or monsters. So it's like having a control of it, but you can't control the amount of units because it's up to D3, so it can be 1 or up to 3. So it's quite unsure, this one. So these command traits are really about hunting units of the opponent one, but you have to be sure that your model that you choose, so the command trait, so the genre, is within 3 inches of it. So it's you have to pay attention which model will be your genre if you want to use such command trait, because otherwise you risk quite a lot. And then we have the artifacts of the Legend of Blood. We have 3 available, and they are really quite interesting. The first one is Amulet of Screams. Roll a dice each time an enemy unit within 18 inches of the bearer successfully casts a spell that is not unbound. On a 3+, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds after the effect of the spell has been resolved. So it's a good way. It's not automatically because it's on a 3+. You can make suffer from 1 to 3 wounds, okay? But still, it can be quite interesting against armies that are related about casting quite a lot of spells, because it's enemy units, so it doesn't apply to a single unit. It's quite interesting. The second one is Orb of Enchantment. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 3 inches of that period and roll a dice. On a 3+, that hero cannot be picked to fight in that phase. So here you have to pay attention because it's once per battle and it's on a 3+, so it's not automatically, and you have really to pay attention about select this because it can be a life saving or something that it doesn't work at all, so it's a gamble this one. And then you have Cloak of Mist and Shadow. Ignore modifier positive and negative, so like be a Night Hound, to save rolls for attack that target the bearer. So it's a good way to make that the bearer itself it's able to always do without any problem about the rand the saving. But remember that you can't improve also the saving, so it's quite interesting. It's related mainly about the being having the model, but if you think that the command traits and the battle traits are quite useful about having a model to go in close combat, it's quite interesting eventually to create a combination that can be quite interesting for such artifact to use, because in such way you are able to have both the ability to ignore the rand of the opponent and at the same time combat and eventually gain bonus against a certain opponent. So it can be quite interesting, but you have to pay attention about the combination that you want to use. And now we have the Legion of Night. We can start with the battle traits. We have 3 battle traits available. The first one is Edgeless Cunning. Once per turn during the enemy charge phase, after an enemy unit finish a charge move, you can pick one friendly Legion of Night unit within 12 inch of that enemy unit and more than 3 inch from all enemy units. That unit can attempt a charge. This it's really quite nice because it's a counter charge, so you don't have to be in combat because otherwise you can't do, obviously. But when an enemy unit charge another unit close to yours once, you can try to counter charge. So it's quite interesting. It's not a sure thing, but at least it's something that can improve quite a lot the way of combat, so it's quite nice. Then we have Sweet Form. At the start of the hero phase, remember hero, not your one, so it can be also in the opponent one. You can carry out this heroic action with a friendly Legion of Night vampire hero instead of any other heroic action you can carry out with that hero. And the Sweet Form is that pick one friendly Legion of Night vampire hero more than 3 inch from all enemy units, so it doesn't have to be in close combat. Remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than an inch from all enemy units. That hero can move in the following movement phase. This it's quite interesting if you think about, because it means that you go to conquer objectives, or eventually forbid the opponent to conquer an objective because you go there before that it arrives. So it can be really quite interesting as you can think, because really it has a lot of options. And remember that it can be combined with edge scanning eventually, because you can be that you put your model, your hero, more than an inch, but the opponent can arrive because maybe it has moving or it goes to charge another unit, and then you can use this same unit to counter charge. You have a lot of options with such combination, and you can use this to be aggressive or to be defensive. So it has a lot of options that are really quite amazing. The last one of the battle traits is Into the Jaws of Death. At the end of the charge phase, you can carry out this monster rampage with a friendly Legion of Night Zombie Dragon or a Legion of Night Tarogest instead of any other monster rampages you can carry out with that unit. This is that pick one enemy unit within 6 inch of this unit that made a charge move in this phase and roll 2d6. Add 3 to the roll if that enemy unit is within half inch of this unit. If the roll is greater than the unmodified charge roll for that charge move, the unit can attack with its Pestilential Breath or Death Strike in this phase, and that must target that enemy unit. So this is really quite interesting because you can target another unit that is not the one that hits against your one, or try against the one that you are going to do. And so it's really quite interesting because you can create a lot more damages than the one that otherwise you'd have. So it's really quite amazing one, but you have really to have one thing in and that you had to have a zombie dragon or a Legion Knight Terror guest, otherwise it doesn't work. So it's limited, but at the same time it has a lot of potential, even if maybe I would have seen this associated to an Avengorii, not to a Legion Knight, but still I appreciate quite a lot that there is such type. And then we had the command traits for the Legion of Night. The first one that we see is above suspicion. During the deployment, instead of setting up this channel on the battlefield, you can put simply it in reserve and make it at the end of your movement phase, set up this channel on the battlefield more than an inch from all enemies. This could be interesting about conquer objective, contesting eventually objective if you think that your enemy has to move and maybe it will reach them lately, or otherwise to try to shoot them if you have enough range, or a lot of different options that could be quite interesting, and you can even try to charge eventually later. So it's quite interesting. You have a lot of combination. Think about using this and edge scanning, for example. There are really a lot of options, but remember that you do this only in the first battle round. So you have bonuses and maluses, and you have to pay attention because it's a double edge, this one. We have then debate. While this channel is on the battlefield, add 1 to save roll and ward rolls for attacks that target friendly Legion Knight summable unit in the first battle round, so the round of both yours and the opponent. And this it's quite interesting because it means that, for example, the normal defenseless minions that it's 6+ become 5+ automatically, and the armors it's improved, so you suffer technically less wounds than otherwise, but only the first battle round and only summable units, so you have to pay attention if it's really useful or not. Then you have Unbending Wheels. Mods in friendly Legion Knight summable units count as 2 mods instead of 1 for the purpose of contesting objectives where there are wholly within 12 inch of this channel. The limitation is wholly within 12 inch because it seems quite a lot, but summable units are technically big and tend to be not so good about being totally wholly within. You tend to spread them eventually or so on, so it's not so easy. Anyway, it's a nice command trait eventually to choose, but you have to pay attention about the combination that you are looking at. If you are going to use small summable units, remember also that there are also hero summable eventually, so you have to pay attention about which one of these could be interesting and so on, because there are a lot of options, but at the same time you have to pay attention about how to develop such options on the battlefield. And then we had the artifacts of power for the Legion of Night, and here we can see some friends that we see in the old Soulblight Gravelords Battletome, but they are quite welcome. The first one is Shard of Night. In your negative modifier, only -1, to save rolls for attacks made with missile weapons, only missile weapons that target the bearer. This could be useful, for example, for models like the Vampire Lord on Dragon Zombie, because it's easier than it target by the missile weapons eventually, so it's nice that there is eventually such thing. Then we have the Kyroterran Cloak. If they are modified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon, only melee, the target the bearer is 1, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attack has been resolved. And the last one is Morgue Close. In your hero phase, if the bearer is more than 3 inches from all enemy units, you can see that they will charge the sieges into the ground using the Morgueless Claw. If you do so, add 2 to the casting roll for friendly Legion of Night Wizard wholly within 12 inches of the bearer unit until your next hero phase. Remember, it doesn't apply only to such mod, but all the other wizard wholly within 12 inches of him. And wizard, not vampires, not other things, all the wizards. However, the bearer cannot move a normal move, run, retreat, or attempt to charge until your next hero phase. So this is quite useful, for example, if you want that you have a wizard that you have to keep in the backlines and so on, and you want to do such things. So it's quite interesting. Okay, the range it's not so great because it's wholly within 12 inch, but at the same time it lets you gain an interesting bonus to cast. So you are going to sacrifice eventually a mod that eventually it has a great amount of range or so on. Remember that there is a spell about the vampires that doesn't have range, and it can create quite a lot of problems to the opponent. So remember that there is quite a lot of interesting things thanks to the Spirit Kill eventually. So you have quite a lot of options available about this, and I think that the Morgoth's Claw, it will be one of the best chosen, because it can be really quite interesting about this, and really quite heavy to contest about, because a plus just plus 2 to casting, it's quite interesting. And then we had the Virkos Dynasty. Now we go to see about the battle trait first. We had two battle traits that are really quite interesting. The first one is the strength of the wolf is the pack. In the combat phase, after a friendly Virkos hero has fought for the first time in that phase, remember that the combat phase can be your one or your opponent one, you can pick one friendly Virkos unit that has not yet fought in that combat phase, that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, it has to be in combat, and that is wholly within 12 inches of that friendly Virkos hero. That unit fight immediately, but you have to note that if you take another Virkos hero as the other unit, you can take another unit then, so it works only once after the first Virkos hero had fought, so remember this. But anyway, it's really even a life saving, because it means that your hero, your unit and so on can fight and do damages, kill the unit before that it suffer attacks and so on, or anyway it make damage before it's killed and so on. So it's really quite interesting. It's a way to attack twice instead of other things, and it's about that you don't have to consume command abilities, command points, or create some combinations on. It's about rotate and it works always, so it's quite nice. And you don't even have to have vampires, really, only Virgo hero that start. The second one, it's about actions, so it's an infamous lineage. At the start of your hero phase, you can carry one of the heroic actions that we see now with a friendly Virkos vampire hero. Remember that it has to be a vampire to do this, instead of any other heroic action that you can carry out with that hero. Pack Alpha, pick one friendly Virkos vampire hero, then pick one friendly Virkos that Walkers unit within 12 inches of that hero, within, not wholly within at least, and visible to them. You can add D3 mods to that unit. And remember that you can make the unit go over the maximum amount size that it had, so because that works and they are allowed to do such. So it's really quite interesting, because in such a way you are really able to make that you can supplement the other options about replenish the unit of that workers, and so do it. You use an action, okay, but sometimes you need, for example, for getting more massive units, or to make that you can block and you have enough models to block the enemy units and so on. So it's really quite interesting and quite nice. And I have my favorite action, that it's King of the Wolf. Pick one friendly Virkos vampire hero. If you do so, you can add one unit of 10 werewolves to your army. The unit must be set up wholly within 9 inches of the hero carrying out this heroic action, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. The werewolf unit can move in the following movement phase, and you can carry out this action more than once per battle. This is quite nice, because it means that you can simply have another unit add to your army roster, and so save the points to have a unit of 10 werewolves to using such action. So it's quite nice. Moreover, I like quite a lot this one, because in the 6th edition I was usually having the summon the wolves, so I was really having quite a lot of fun. Okay, that one, it was on the battlefield. This is within 9 inches of the model. Still, I quite like such thing, because anyway, it's something that make quite a lot of interesting options that are available, because you can summon the unit when you need, and so it's nice. Okay, you have to pay attention about not be wholly within, also be more than an inch from the enemy units, we wholly within an inch of that hero. Still, I think that it's really quite nice, and I quite like such action, so I love. And then we have the command traits for the Virkos Dynasty, and then we have driven by Death Stench, that you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Virkos unit wholly within 9 inches of this arm, classic one and still always welcome. Hunter's Nair, for the purpose of contesting objectivity, this channel counts as a number of mod equal to the wounds characteristic, so perfect for the ones that have quite a lot amount of wounds, so the Lord Vampire on Dragon Zombie and so on. Then we have Spur Trackers at the start of your hero phase. Friendly Virkos Deadwalkers unit wholly within 9 inches of this channel can make a normal move up to 3 inches. So it's a good way to make that you can move this unit to go to conquest, to conquer objective, eventually to improve their movement toward the opponent. So it's quite a lot of different things, and you can really use in a lot of ways. This is quite strategically. Obviously, you have to have Virkos Deadwalkers in your army to be wholly within 9 inches of this channel, but still can be really quite interesting because it can make you really having a lot of interesting options that you can use to improve the ways, for example, to control the battlefield itself. So it's something that I quite like because you can use this every time. So in each of your hero phase, with having that channel wholly within, but that walkers being wholly within 9 inches of such channel. So it can be really quite interesting. And I've had the Artifact of Power that it's only for the Virkos ones. Here we have really quite interesting ones to choose from. We have Ulfenkarni Philateri at 1 to the word roll for friendly Virkos Sunnable units for the purpose of the Deathless Minion battle trait, while there are wholly within 9 inches of the bearer. You have to pay attention about such details. Wholly within 9 inches of the only Sunnable unit. And to improve this in the best way, you have to have a hero that is a sunnable, so the Waking and the Waking on Skeleton Steed. And remember that another thing, it applies this word only on the Deathless Minion. So if you are able to have better word roll for other reasons, you still apply this only to the Deathless Minion one. So there is such limitation. So remember about us. So other than you are able to improve for other sources, the Deathless Minion one, this one is applicable only to the Deathless Minion. So pay attention because from 6+ we move to 5+. Then we have Terminus Cloak. At the start of the enemy hero phase, you can say that the bearer will stop the Terminus Cloak. If you do so, roll a dice on a 3+ until the end of that phase. Start at 1 from casting rolls for the enemy wizard. All enemy wizard everywhere on the battlefield. This is an amazing one. Okay, it's on a 3+, so you risk that it doesn't work, but at the same time, it's quite interesting. And then we have standard of the Ulfenwatch. If the bear is on the battlefield, you can roll a dice each time your opponent spends a command point. On a 4+, you receive an extra command point. So this is amazing, and remember one thing, it works again on all the battlefield. So everywhere on the battlefield that the enemy make that spend a command point, then you can make such thing. So it's quite interesting because spending command point, it's not even using a command ability. So if a command ability requires even more command points, it's quite interesting. But if you are able to use more command ability at the same price of the command point, you can't use this. It's a trick, but you have to remember such difference. So this is quite interesting. All these artifacts are amazing ones, and really you have simply to think how you want to make. And as you can see, the Virkos are really associated to the summer unit and more about the Deadwalkers because they have the mass ones. And you can really play a lot of different ways because wolves and Deadwalkers will be your main ones when you are going to play with the Virkos. One thing to notice anyway about the Virkos Dynasty is that the command traits and the Artifact of Power are available also for the unique Virkos that are the only one that has such specific. So amazing. And really, there are a lot of Virkos units and you can use the artifact and command traits on them. Strange, and it seems that really Games Workshop is trying to bring up such dynasty again as done in the previous Battletome. Really. And then we have the Kastelai Dynasty. Here we can see about the battle trait first. The first one that we see is Might of the Crimson Keep, that make that at the end of the combat phase, if any enemy models were slain by attack made by melee weapon by a friendly Kastelai vampire, remember only vampire, unit in that phase, you can pick one relevant unit to that friendly unit for the rest of the battle, so it lasts all the battle. Then, if more than one of the abilities would apply to that unit, you can pick one of the abilities that you prefer to apply to that unit, so that you can make gain. Unit can gain the same ability more than once per battle, but they are quite amazing anyway. So, if the slain model was a hero or a monster, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that unit melee weapon, excluding those of its mount, so only the vampires. If the slain model has a wound characteristic of 3 or more and was not a hero or a monster, add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit melee weapon, excluding those of the mount again. And if the slain model has a wound characteristic of 2 or less, so the usual ones, add 1 to that unit move characteristic. And it's a good way to make improving the movement, because you can reach the opponent faster to kill again. So it's quite interesting, because remember that it's about model slain, not unit slain, so it's even faster. Then we have the Master of Retaliation. At the start of the hero phase, you can carry out this heroic action with a friendly Kastelai vampire hero instead of any other heroic action you can carry out with that hero. It's Master of Retaliation. Pick one friendly Kastelai vampire hero until the end of the turn. At the end of each phase, if any wounds or mortal wound were allocated to that hero in that phase and that hero was not slain, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of that hero. On a 2+, that unit suffered the 3 mortal wounds. It's like if I suffer, you suffer even more, really. So then the last one is Battle Crest. At the end of the charge phase, you can carry out this monster's rampage with a friendly Kastelai monster instead of any other monster rampage you can carry out with that monster. So add 1 to the wound roll for attacks made with melee weapon by this unit in the following combat phase. So it's quite interesting, and remember that it applies to all the attacks of the model, so it can be really quite interesting if you have, for example, a Vampire Lord on Dragon Zombie or so on. So it's quite interesting, this one, and it's all related about having a Kastelai, but it's more related about the vampires, and if you think that the Kastelai are related about martial vampires, it's perfectly suited. Then we had the command traits for the Kastelai that are quite interesting. The first one is Swift and Deadly. You can reroll charge roll for friendly Kastelai unit while there are wholly within 12 inch of this genre. At least this works for all the units, and the 12 inch is not bad at all as a range. Then we have Undead Bloodlord. Once per turn, if this genre is on the battlefield, when a friendly Kastelai vampire unit gain an ability with the Might of the Crimson Keep battle trait that this genre has not already gained, genre gained the same ability, and it was on all the battlefield, so it's quite interesting. Then we have the Shifting Keep. During the deployment, if this genre is on the battlefield, instead of setting up a Kastelai Blood Knight unit on the battlefield, you can put this on reserve, and you can set up one unit in the Crimson Keep for each unit that you have set up yet on the battlefield, so maximum 50-50. And at the end of your month phase, you can set up one or more of these reserve units on the Crimson Keep on the battlefield, wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This could be really quite interesting, because it means that you can select when make this unit arrive, and you can make this arrive from every edge, so try to conquest objective to then try to charge and so on, because okay, it has to be more than an inch, but it's not so difficult eventually to make them charge, so it's quite interesting. So all this could be quite strategically quite useful. Then we have the Kastelai's Artifacts of Power. Here we have these Sand Shards. Once per battle round, at the end of the Battle Shock phase, you can return one slain model to each friendly Kastelai summonable unit wholly within 18 inches of the bear. This, sincerely, I would not have expected to be on a Kastelai, because it's about the summonable, and the Kastelai are related more about the vampires. So I'm really quite surprised about this, because it's always amazing. This is one that make you bring one for each unit. It's better than all the other summoning that you have. Really amazing one. Then you have Fragment of the Keep. Start at 1 from wound rolls for attack made with melee weapons by enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer. So it's a way to make suffer less to the bearer itself, but also if you are going to combat other units of the Kastelai against the enemy, which the Kastelai hero has this one as artifact, so it makes also those one being wounded with 1 to the wound roll. So it's not bad at all, and it's quite nice. And I've had the red casket, add 1 to run roll and charge rolls for the bearer. This it's amazing because it's a way really to make charge even better. And remember that you can combine with the command trait eventually that make you re-roll the charge eventually. So it's nice, really. It's something that can be quite amazing, this one, to bring the bearer in close combat. So these ones are quite interesting, and the first one continued to surprise me. And I've had the Avengorii Dynasty. Now we go to see about the battle traits. We have 2 battle traits available. The first one is Cursed Abomination. Once per turn, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 friendly Avengorii monster. Remember that it can be a hero, but it must be a monster within 3 inches of any enemy units, so it has to be in close combat. Until the end of that phase, use the top row of that unit damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has suffered. So it works at the mass perfect attacks, so quite amazing. Then the next one is Titans of the Grave. At the end of the charge phase, you can carry out one of the monsters rampage that we see right now with a friendly Avengorii monster, instead of any other monster rampage that you could carry out with that monster. The first one is Maddening Hunger. Pick up to the 3 different enemy models within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice. Roll separately for each model. If the roll is greater than the wound characteristic of that model, it is slain. Without any saving, without any word, it is slain. So it means that you could kill easily something that it has 1 or 2 wounds as wound characteristic, but technically you could even try to destroy and slay totally models that are heroes with maybe 5 wounds. It's risky, but you could try. So it's something that it can be quite worth about. Then we have Unstoppable Nightmare. Until the end of the following combat phase, the first time a different friendly Avengorii unit within 6 inches of this unit is destroyed, this unit can fight immediately after the last model in that destroyed unit is removed from play. This is quite interesting because it means that you can technically attack twice, because if you are able to have this model attack before that the other unit is destroyed, technically you should be able to attack another time with this model. The problem is that you have to be within 6 inches of the destroyed unit, so it's not so simple, but at the end it can be anyway a nice thing, because anyway it's an impulse charge, so it's quite interesting. Then I had the command traits about the Avengorii. The first one is Monstrous Might. Start at 1 from wound rolls for attack made with melee weapons that target friendly Avengorii monsters wholly within 12 inches of this genre. So if you have the genre that it's on a monster too, it's quite welcome. Then we have Torment Driven Tours. At the start of the combat phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of the genre, so in close combat. On a 5+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound, and the strike last effect applies to that unit until the end of that phase. So it's a way to apply both the mortal wound and the strike last effect. Not bad. Then we have Unhinged Rampager. You can reroll charge rolls for this genre. In addition, at the end of the shooting phase, if any wounds or mortal wound were allocated to this genre in that phase, and this genre is more than 9 inches from all enemy unit, this genre can move up to this 6 inch. So it's like a redeploy eventually too, and remember that you can use this additional movement to bring yourself closer to the enemy or faster to the enemy. So it can be really quite interesting, but remember that you have to try to make this useful. So pay attention about this, because anyway it's in the shooting phase, and so it's not easy. You can reroll the charge rolls for this genre, so there are 2 different effects, and you can decide which combination to use, if move because if you suffered in the shooting phase, even your war technically, but it's a problem because technically if you suffer in the shooting phase, the opponent should have done. So there are some situations where you can bring such up, other that it's not so easy. So it's to see, but anyway, there are quite a lot of options that you can have, and anyway, you have a free reroll charge roll, so nice. Then had the artifacts of power for the Avengorii, and here you have to pay attention because all these are having once per battle as usage. So the first one is Breath of the Void move. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bear that is visible to them and roll a dice. On a 2+, that unit suffer a number of mortal wounds equal to the roll. So it means from a minimum of 2 mortal wounds to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. Okay, nice, but not so great to justify once per battle. Then we have Gorvar Collar. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can say that the bear will don the Governor Collar. If you do so, the strike first effect apply to the bear until the end of that combat phase. This is quite nice because you are sure that you are able to strike first. So it's nice, but remember, once per battle, so you have to choose attentively when to apply such artifact. Then you have Furious Crown. Once per battle, at the start of your charge phase, you can say that the bear will unleash the Fury of the Crown. If you do so, after the bear makes a charge move in that phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of the bear and roll a number of die equal to the charge roll for the charge move. For each 4+, the unit suffer 1 mortal wound. Okay, crit, but not so great. We had the Black Knights that do the same eventually with the working around. It's not so great to justify once per battle, essentially, because it's nice, but we can do this in a lot of different ways with other units and so on. So I don't think that it's so great, other than in addition to something else maybe, but it's not so great. About the grand strategies, we have Last for Domination. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you control more gravesite than your opponent. Control of gravesite is determined in the same way that you control the objectives. Here you are lucky because you can control objectives and gravesite at the same time, but you have to think about where to position the gravesite and so on. So it's simple, but you have to pay a bit of attention. The Empire of Corpus. When a battle ends, you complete this strategy if you replace 3 or more friendly summonable units that were destroyed during the battle. So you are sure that you have at least to sacrifice 3 summonable units to try to recover them lately. So pay attention about because they had to be destroyed to be summoned again. Then we had Dance Macabre, that when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are more friendly summonable units than enemy unit wholly within the enemy territory. So it depends by the amount of summonable units that you have and how many you are able to bring in the opponent territory and be more than the units of the enemy one. So it's delicate, this one. And then we have Crimson Lord. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are no heroes from your opponent's starting army on the battlefield and the only friendly heroes on the battlefield are vampires. So if you don't include any vampire in your army, forget about this. And remember, there are 2 things that you have to remember. The heroes of the opponent not starting army. So it means that if the opponent summoned some new heroes, for example with the gravesite, you killed some hero and he come back, they should not count because they are not the ones in the starting army. And if you summon new heroes, for example, things about the demons, where they can summon new heroes without any problem. But moreover, remember that you had to have only friendly vampires, no other heroes. So no other mages, no white knights, no other things other than heroes. So or you kill them voluntarily, or you sacrifice them, or you really can't do, because if the opponent leave even one of your heroes that are not a vampire alive, this kind of strategy is not done. So it's something that you are really to think about having this, because it requires specific rules, because you have to kill all the heroes of the enemy and at least one and only vampires have to be remaining about your heroes. So it's really the worst about the choosing that you can gain for the grand strategies. Then we have the battle tactics for the Soulblight Gavelords. The first one is Colors Overload. Pick one friendly summable unit more than 3 inch from all enemy units. You complete this tactic if that friend unit is destroyed during this turn. So it means that you make really go that someone will do to sacrifice itself. So at least try to make trouble for your enemy eventually. You have Cursed Unlife. You complete this tactic if any wounds are located to your general or to 2 other friendly vampires unit are healed using the hunger ability during this turn. So it means in close combat. And your general has to be a vampire eventually. And or it's one or it's the other one. Then we have the Grasping Dead. Pick one friendly sunbow unit within 3 inch of any enemy unit. You complete this tactic if that unit is within 3 inch of any enemy unit at the end of this turn. So you have to remain there. Simply, you have to still be within 3 inches, so in close combat. We have the Choicest Vintage. Pick one enemy hero on the battlefield. You complete this tactic if that enemy hero is slain during this turn by an attack made by a friendly vampire hero. So it's a duel technically, and you have to be able to kill, so you have to choose attentively which one will be the enemy hero that you take. Expand the Grave Empires. You complete this tactic if you control 2 or more objectives wholly outside of your territory, and each of those objectives is contested by a friendly summable or vampire unit. This is quite simple. We can say that you have summable or vampire, so it can be quite, really easy to do, because it can be also a hero summable. Anyway, you have also the graveside that can summon on, so it's not a problem. Okay, it's a problem, but it's not so difficult at the end. And then we have Endless Nightmare. Pick one friendly Soulblight Gavelords summonable unit on the battlefield. You complete this tactic if 6 or more slain mod are returned to that unit during this turn. And here it's quite simple, because if you play with skeletons, you are sure that you are able to make some comeback. So if you are able to do in the middle of the game, it's not so difficult, because you have a lot of ways to make comeback mods. So really, this it's quite affordable as option as battle tactic. About Nagash, we can say that it's quite solid as character. It costs a lot, but it's quite solid. It's 18 wounds with a save of 3+ without any improvement. It's really amazing as it is. The wounds table, it's really quite impressive, so much that if it's clean, it can cast 8 spells. Obviously, it's a wizard with the number of spells that this unit can attempt to cast in your hero phase is determined using the 9 books of Nagash ability, and this unit can attempt to unbind any number of spells if the enemy hero fails any number of spells, so it doesn't have a limit. If this unit is part of an 8-count Flesh Eater Curse or Soulblight Gravelords army, it knows all the spells for the spell lord that the faction has abilities, in addition to the other spells it knows. So it's not all technically. You can really make a choose about what you can cast. Obviously, played in that army, not also the armies that it's not playing it. It's a War Master, so this unit can be included in an account of Shitter Kurz or Soulblight Gravelords army, and if it is treated as a general, even if it is not a model pick to be the army's general. It's obvious, it's Nagash, it's command all. In addition, you can still use the army's alliance abilities, even if this unit is not from the army's faction. However, this unit does not benefit from them, so it's quite nice. It has Fly. It has a companion that this unit is accompanied by all spirits armed with spectral claws and dagger. That is the spirit that you see in the mod itself. It has Alaknash, the Staff of Power, that add 3 to casting and bind and dispel rolls for this unit. Always, it doesn't change based on the wound that is suffered. Quite amazing. It has Invocation of Nagash at the start of your hero phase. For each friendly summonable Mordant or Osseb Reaper unit wholly within range of this unit, you can either heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if no wounds has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slain model to it that has a combined wound characteristic of 3 or less. The range is represented in the schedule up here, so it's quite awesome. Then we have Morcane. Friendly death unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit has a word save of 5+. Not so great, not bad. Then we have Supreme Lord of the Undead. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick up one friendly summonable Mordant or Ossiakable Reaper unit with a wound characteristic of 3 or less that has been destroyed and on roll and dice. On a 3+, a new replacement unit with half of the model from that unit that was destroyed, rounded up, is added to your army. The replacement unit must be set up wholly within 12 inch of this unit and more than 9 inch from all enemy units. Units set up in this way cannot move in the following moving phase. Each extra unit can only be replaced one replacement, and unit cannot themselves be replaced. But it means that in a way you can try eventually to charge. So it's really quite amazing because it can keep one unit and make it come back. So any unit on 3+, it's amazing this one because wow, it's really something amazing. And then we had the 9 books of Nagash. The number of spell, as I said, that the content is shown up, but I can say that 8 spell is not bad. Hand of Dust is a spell that has a casting value of 8 and a range of 3. It starts to the cast, pick one enemy model within range and visible to the caster. Then take a dice and hide it in one of your hands or under one of the appropriate container and so on. If they pick the one holding the dice, the spell has no effect. If they pick the empty hand or container, the enemy model is slain. So it has 50% of possibility to make. Sincerely, I don't like such thing. I prefer to roll a dice than to make such game, but it's a sort of classic about Nagash such spell. Then we have Soul Stealer, that is a spell that has casting value of 7 and a range of 24 inch. It starts to cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffer D3 mortal wounds if the modified casting roll for this spell is 9+, and this spell is not bound. That unit suffer D6 mortal wound instead of D3. You can heal up to 1 wound that has been allocated to the caster for each mortal wound caused by this spell that is not negated. So it's really quite nice, but you have to have some consideration. The Hand of Dust, I don't think that it will be improved, for example, with the ability of Arcan. So here, I think that it will be soon released a fact about that it has the 3 inch, because to be within 3 inch, Nagash has to be in close combat. If you amplify such, it means that the Nagash technically could try to kill model like this without being in close combat. So I think that there will be such a limitation. So, and remember that about Soul Stealer, you can't heal if the opponent model is able to have a ward that prevent that wound. So pay attention about such. Still, Nagash, it's quite massive. I don't like to play Nagash as itself. I have painted and I made a video about Nagash because I love the model. I use a lot of time to be able to monetize and paint this model. It's wonderful. Still, I don't like to play on the table because, so, in my opinion, it's really too big. It's a divinity. I have to play with some narrative or some peculiar, some big games about Age of Sigmar to be able to really bring up such model on the battlefield. But obviously, it's my opinion about. Then we have Manfred von Carsten. This it's a model that it's the main character about the Legion, right? Because it's its own Legion, and we can see that compared to the Battletome previous one, we see an improvement of the damage table because now it's more solid. The profile, you see that the wounds come from 12 of the previous one to 14 now, and the attacks of its main weapon, that it's Gasteful, move from being 4 to 5 and from 1 to 2. And the damage is fixed, and I prefer like this. It's a wizard, and it can cast 2 spells in its own hero phase and combine 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. And it's War Master. This is quite important because if it includes in any Soulblight Gavelords army, even if it's not a Legion Knight. It's taken as general, even if it's not pick a general, so it's an additional general. Remember that anyway, it will not gain the bonuses of another Legion of Dynasty that it's not the Legion of Knight, so only the battle trait that are basis for everyone. Then we had the Armor of Templehof, that it's the classical one, so the first wound or mortal wound suffered to this unit in each phase is negated. Remember, each phase, so it applies to every phase of every turn. Then we had the Sword of Unholy Power. This makes that each time this unit fight, any wounds caused by the Ebony Claws, daggers, and all the other attacks that it has to be caused before than the one caused by the Gavelords. So pay attention about such, cause it's quite interesting, this one. And if any enemy model is slain by wounds caused by this unit Gavelords, because this you have to pay attention about the order of such attacks. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapon used by friendly Legion Knight summable units that are wholly within 12 inch of this unit. So it's okay, but still it's quite problematic, because you have to think that you have to pay attention which models you can kill with such weapons. So you have to go against units that are sure that you'll be able to use such attacks to at least cause some damages to kill some models. So, okay, it's a bit limited, also wholly within 12 inch and only summonable, so you have to pay attention which unit will be around you to gain such attack, and technically you have to make Manfred attack before the other units, otherwise the bonus is lost. Then we have Mortar of Night, that make that the strike first attack effect apply to this unit if make a charge move in the same turn, and in addition, if this unit receives the redeploy command, it can attempt to charge instead of making a d6 move, so you can charge in the opponent turn. So it's quite interesting, because it's really a way to make that you can use the charge to move away, you can make so many other things, so it's really quite interesting. Then we had the Anger, that it makes that for each wound or mortal wound that it inflicts, it can heal itself up to 6 wound total maximum. And sincerely, I find it quite interesting, because it's much better than before as amount of wounds that you can heal. Before, even one anyway, it was able to cure a fixed amount. Now anyway, it makes that if you are able to make a lot more wounds, you are able to gain more refilling of your own wounds, so it's really quite interesting. Then we had the spell, that is specific one, that is Wind of Death, that is a spell that has a casting value of 7 and a range of 18 inch, and if successfully cast, pick one enemy within range and visible to the caster, as usual, and roll a dice for that unit and each other enemy unit within 6 inch of that unit. On a 3+, that unit being rolled for suffer d3 mortal wounds. It's like having a sort of meteor that crash against the enemy, because it's really, you can gain that you target a unit and all the other units within 6 inch. Okay, on a 3+, but it's not so difficult, and you can really make quite a lot of damages if you think about, because it's a normal spell and at the same time can be quite intriguing. So this it's a model that if you combine with the Legion Knight 2, you can gain quite a lot of amazing bonuses eventually. Still, even by itself, I think that it's a good model anyway to think about. Then we have Neferata, that is one of my favorite named character about the Soulblight Gavelords. Here we have an improvement of the profile itself. So from 12 wounds we have now 14 wounds. We have that the melee weapon Acnet are as a range of 2 instead of 1 before, so I quite like. The damage table is much more stable now, so it's perfectly welcome. We have that it's a wizard that can attempt to cast 2 spells in your own hero's phase and unbind 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. It's War Master, so as for Manfred, if this unit is included in Soulblight Gravelords army, is treated as general even if it's not picked as being a general. And again, remember that this means that you can include such a model in any Legion or Dynasty of the Soulblight Gavelords. Again, that battle traits of the general ones, but not other than the Legend of Blood, the other ones. So if you include in a Virkos or so on, it doesn't get the battle taste specific for that dynasty, so pay attention. Then we have Fly, obviously, Dagger of Jet, that technically could be one of the main and most powerful weapon that you can find, that make that at the end of any phase, if any wound caused by this unit activated card, so only such damages are valid, were allocated to an enemy hero. So remember that it has to be on a hero, enemy one, in that phase, and that enemy hero has not been slain, obviously. On a 5+, that enemy hero is slain. So it's nothing sure, because you had to damage with the dagger and so on, and the mod has not been slain, obviously. And still you had to make a 5+, but technically you can kill everything, even if only one wound of such attacks has been on that model, and really, so it can be really quite amazing. Then we have Twilight Allure, that was before command ability, now it's basic. So subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target friendly Legion Blood units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So it's quite nice, because it means that, okay, 12 inches it's not so much, but at the same time it means that it applies to all the unit, and really you don't need that the enemy unit are within the range. You only need that your unit are wholly within. So it on this mod and all the other units around, so quite nice. We have Mortal Cold Blood, that at the end of the deployment, before determining the control of the objectives, you can pick up up to 3 friendly Legion of Blood units on the battlefield, and first remove that unit from the battlefield, and then set up it again wholly within your territory. So you redeploy such unity. Then remove those friendly Legion of Blood unit from the battlefield, and then again wholly within this your territory. Really, you really simply make a change of the strategy. It's something that before it was related about the Legion Knight. Now it's an ability about Neferata, and I quite like anyway. Then we have the Anger, that it's something that let you heal the model to a maximum of 6 wounds if you are able to cause enough wounds and mortal wounds to your opponent, so quite nice. We have Dark Mist, that is a spell that has casting value of 6 and a range of 12, so quite short as range. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Legion of Blood unit wholly within the range, so 12 inch, and visible to the cast in your negative modifier to save rolls for attacks that target that unit until your next hero phase. So the positive ones still apply, only the negative ones are forgotten, so you ignore the rand of the enemy. So it's really quite interesting, this one, because it's really a way to improve a certain unit, even Neferata itself eventually, because if you think about using this and Mystic Shield, you have a 2+ save that it can't be worsened. So it's really something interesting. This is a model that sincerely I could think about gain in my Legion of Blood, because it's something that I'd like to play with. Then we have Prince Godrai, that it's the main character about the Kastelai Dynasty. Here we can see some change, and it's not one of my favorite, but anyway it's quite nice, and you can think eventually to use this if you are going to play the Kastelai instead of Vampire Lord on Dragon Zombie. Anyway, here we have that the amount of wounds move from 14 to 16, so welcome. We have the amount of attacks of the Battle Lance move to 5, and we have some changes about the Dragon Zombie, that now see a fixed damage about the snappy move, and the Pestillion Breath, that now it's a classic one. Sincerely, I'm not going to regret the previous one, because okay, it was amazing, but at the same time it was problematic every time to use, so now it's much better and technically can cause even more damages, so it's much welcome. Then it has a damage table that it's much more stable, so I like. It's a wizard with an attempt of 1 to cast a spell and bind one spell in the enemy hero phase. It's a War Master, so as we have seen for the other ones, so Neferata and Manfred, it's considered every time a general, even if it's in another army of the Soulblight Gavelords, and it's not taken as general itself. And remember that anyway it gain only the normal battle trait and the battle trait of the Kastelai, not the battle trait of the other armies that it's in. It has, as usual, fly. It has Fist of Nagash that make that once per turn, if this unit is on the battlefield, when a friendly Kastelai vampire unit gains an ability with the might of the Crimson battle trait, you can pick one other friendly Kastelai vampire wholly within 24 inch of this unit that has not already gained that ability and has not gained any other abilities with the might of Crimson Keep battle trait in that turn, that unit gains the same ability. So it's a sort of sharing the ability of the mighty keep. Sincerely, it can be quite interesting because it's something that make you move faster to gain the abilities and so improve the Blood Knights eventually. I think that it's really quite interesting. Then we have Blood Lance Charge that make that this unit's Blood Lance, so the main weapon of the vampire, has a characteristic of free and a damage characteristic of free, so gaining 1 and 1 to each one if it made a charge move in the same turn. Quite welcome. It has anger, so it can, if make wound or mortal wound, heal itself up to 6 wounds. Then it has terror, that it's something associated to the Terror Guest or the Dragon Zombie eventually. So enemy unit cannot receive the Inspiring Presence command while they are within 3 inches of any friendly units with this ability. And it's not bad because it's like having under spells or some abilities or so on that are to be casted, and here it's automatically, so nice. And I have Kick Blood, that is a spell with a casting value of 7. Is successfully cast, the strike first effect applied to the cast until your next hero phase. So this is quite intriguing, and if you think about using such model in Kastelai Dynasty, sincerely I think that it can be quite interesting because you can improve a bit the amount of points that you need, okay, but at the same time you gain some abilities that are quite amazing. This spell, it's amazing because it makes that you can, if you are able to cast successfully, obviously, gain the strike first effect. And the Fist of Nagash, if you have a certain amount of Blood Knights, is something that it improve and make faster the option to damage the opponent. So I think that it's really quite interesting. It can survive more because technically it's a mod that should make quite a lot of attacks against the enemy, and the option about being able to heal yourself faster with the hanger, I think that it's quite welcome. So there are quite a lot of things that are quite nice, and I think that it's something that you should consider about when you are going to play with the Kastelai. Then we have Laokavai, that it's the matriarch about the Avengorii Dynasty. Here we can find an improvement about the melee weapons of such model that has seen the Askurga Rapier, that it has now from 4 to 5 attacks. It has improved of the rend to 2 instead of 1, and also the Golden Age Talos has seen an improvement about the hit from 4 to 3, the wound from 3 to 2, and the rend from 1 to 2 again. Fixed damage, that is now 3 instead of d6, but here we can think that it hit wound and make the wound pass easier because it has a better rend, so it's much better now. Also the Impaling Tail has gained a rend of 1, so even this it's much better. And then we have the abilities. It's a wizard, so it can cast 1 spell in your own hero phase and combine 1 spell in the enemy hero phase. It's War Master, so if this unit is included in a Soulblight Gavelords army, it gains the option about being a general, even if it's not picked as general. And remember that as such model, it gains the general battle trait, but only battle trait, specific one, about the Avengorii, not the battle traits about the other armies, if included. Then we have Fly as rune. You have that has a queen among monsters, so once per turn at the end of the charge phase you can pick one friendly Avengorii monster wholly within 12 inch of this unit. You can carry out 2 different monster rampage with that monster in that phase instead of 1. And remember that Laokavai itself, it's a monster. Then we have Nightmare's Miasma, that it's one of the ability that I love, that it's while an enemy unit is within 3 inches of any friendly unit with this ability, worsen the rend characteristic of that unit's melee weapon by 1 to a minimum of nil. So it means that you are able to make that technically it's like improving your own save without having the improved save, because you can, I can say, decrease, worsen the rend of the opponent, and have also other unit that benefits of this, so it's much better. We have for all the vampire the hanger, so again it can heal itself of maximum 6 wounds for each one of the wound and mortal wound that it makes to the opponent, so nice. Then we have the Queen's Diktat, that is a spell with a casting value of 6 and range 24 inch. It successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range, remember enemy unit, invisible to the caster, until your next hero phase. Friendly Avengorii monsters are eligible to fight in that combat phase if there are within 6 inch of that enemy unit instead of 3 inch, and they can move an extra 3 inch when they pile in. It's quite interesting because it means that you can target an enemy unit and so make all the other monster Avengorii unit gain quite a lot of bonus about being able, even if they don't charge, to move in close combat with it. And so it's something that you have really to think about. This model is something that it has a lot of melee potential to express. Then we have the Avengorii Lord, that I want to remember you, it's not necessarily associated to the Avengorii Dynasty, so you can include in other armies. Here we have that has changed the profile about the model, so it has an improvement about the Gold Range Talons and the Impaling Tail, as we've seen for the Laukavai. So it has an improved hit, wound, rend, and the damage, in my opinion. And also the Impaling Tail has seen an improvement about the rend of those attacks. It's a wizard with one spell to cast in your hero phase and one to embody in the enemy hero phase. It can fly. We have Festering Fist. Once per turn at the end of the combat phase, you can pick one friendly Soulblight Gravelords monster that it's not a hero, that is wholly within 12 inch of this unit and that has destroyed any enemy unit in that phase. Here all wounds allocated to that monster. Here you have to pay attention because it's really quite interesting, but having such monsters that it's not a hero, it means that it's the Tarot or the Dragon Zombie not mounted, obviously. And it's quite interesting because this make that you can eventually heal all wounds if it destroyed. So if you finish a unit eventually with that monster, you can make heal all the wounds of that same monster. Nice, but at the same time you have to have such Dragon Zombie, such Tarot eventually, and wholly within 12 inch of the Avengorii Lord, so not quite simple as ability to use. Then we have the Nightmare's Miasma. While an enemy unit is within 3 inch of any friendly unit with this ability, worsen the rend characteristic of that unit melee weapons by 1 to a minimum of nil. And it's awesome. I said the same for the Laukavai, and I think that it's something amazing one. We have the Hunger, that again it's for all the vampires, so that makes you heal this model up to 6 wounds for each wound and mortal wound you heal 1, so it's quite interesting. We have then Cursed Reflection, that is a spell that has a casting value of 5 and a range of 24 inch. Is successfully cast, pick one friend Soulblight Gravelords monster wholly within range and visible to the caster. That unit can use the Hunger ability for the caster War Scroll until your next hero phase. Again, it means the Tarot and the Dragon Zombie, because the other ones that are monsters and all have such ability because they are vampires. So it's really a synergic with the Tarot and the Dragon Zombie. Eventually, you can try to put the Avengorii army this model, because in that way you'll be able to have the Tarot and Dragon Zombie as battle line, and this make them much more interesting because they are battle line and you can gain the bonus given by the Avengorii Lord too. So it can be quite interesting in certain situation and certain amount of combinations. Then we have Radukar the Wolf, that it's the first of the models that it's about the Virkos Dynasty that we see, and it's mainly related about Cursed City, and I love for such thing. As profile, it has 1 more wound than a normal Vampire Lord, but worse save because it has 4+ instead of 3+ of a normal Vampire Lord. It's still a wizard, so it can cast 1 spell in your hero phase and combine 1 spell in the enemy hero phase. It has the Hunger, so it can heal itself after the close combat based on the number of wound or mortal wound that inflict to the enemies. So it's quite interesting anyway. Then we have Call to the Hunt, that in the combat phase, if this unit made a charge move in the same turn, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Virkos summonable unit where there are wholly within 12 inch of this unit. So you have to charge, there have to be summonable unit Virkos, so of the Dynasty Virkos as Soulblight army, and they are to be wholly within 12 inch. So you have some limitation about, but still it's a bonus that you can add to eventually command abilities and so on. Then have Loyal to the Last, that make that if this unit is within 3 inch of a friendly Kosagi Night Guard unit, before you allocate a wound or mortal wound, you can transfer this wound and mortal wound to the Kosagi Night Hound once on a 3+, so they are technically bodyguards, literally. So it's quite nice in this way. But anyway, this mod essentially it's not so great if you think about, because it's a name character that it's quite famous because it's one of the main characters about Curse City. So it's a bit of pity to see this profile about the normal version of such model. Now have Radukar the Beast, that it's literally the improved version of Radukar the Wolf. This has 12 wounds, 8 inch of movement and save 4+, and it has 2 type of attacks. The main one that is from itself, that it's 6 attack, and the companion that make other 6 attacks. Then it has the run and still charge later in the turn, so it means that at the double you can make the movement of 14 inch, quite amazing. It has the same ability Call to the Hunt, that is the one that we're seeing for Radukar the Wolf. So in the combat phase, if this unit made a charge move in the same turn, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Virkos summonable unit where there are wholly within 12 inch of this unit. So quite interesting. Remember that anyway, this good if you are in a Virkos Dynasty as Bloodline. Then we had the Hunger, that it's the same that we've seen before, but with the limit of 6, because this time we had 12 wounds available. We have Unleashed Ferocity, if the modified hit roll for an attack made with its own weapons, so the one not of the companion, so the Bloodseek Claws, is 6 as a modified one. The target suffers 2 mortal wounds and the attack sequence end. Then we have Supernatural Reflexes, subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks that target this model, and these apply to both the melee and the shooting, and both, I repeat, hit and wound rolls. So quite amazing, you can make it last quite a lot. Then we have the Beast Will Out, that make that this unit cannot retreat. However, at the end of any phase, if any wound or mortal wound were allocated to this unit in that phase, and this unit is more than 12 inch from all enemy units, this unit can move up to this 6 inch. It means that if it's damaged, you can make that it can move toward the opponent units, or you can try to move to conquer the objectives and so on eventually. So it has a lot of, I can say, strategically option. Still, it should be against the enemies. But anyway, it's something that makes this model quite interesting. I love the background about such model, and this Beast version, it can be said that it's quite intriguing to play with, obviously, if you're going to play the Virkos Dynasty as Bloodline usable. Evia Volga. This it's the only new model released with this Battletome on the Soulblight Gravelords 2023, and this is amazing, really. If you think about it's quite amazing model as profile. It has 6 wound, a movement of 6 inch, save 4+, bravery 10 obviously, and it has a profile that is quite amazing because it has a normal profile about the vampire, because it has 5 attacks that hit on 3+, wound on 3+, round 1 and 2 damages. But the special one, it's about the Needling Fangs that are its companion, technically. This is 2d6+ on 4+, 1 rand and 1 damage. Anyway, it's 2d6 at 1 rand. But this, it's interesting because it has the anger that it's common about all the vampires, so it can recover the equal amount of the wounds that it suffer, and it doesn't have the limitation about the 6 wound, because simply it's 6 the maximum that it can recover. And the Needling Fangs, it's about the Shuriken Swarm that subtract 1 from hit rolls for attack that target this unit. All attacks So it means that it's both for combat and shooting. In addition, if this unit has any wound allocated to it, the attack characteristic of this unit, Needling Fang, is 12 instead of 2d6. So it means that you don't have to heal this. If you heal, it's risk to decrease in power. It's quite amazing, this one. Moreover, it has Behemoth's ban that if any monster are within 3 inches of this unit count as 10 models for the purpose of contesting objectives, so not bad at all. In addition, while an enemy monster is within 3 inches of this unit, the attack characteristic of that monster's melee weapons is 1. So it's technically like having a battle trait or something like the command trait or so on, but applied to a specific model without using nothing else. I remember that eventually you can, because it's a Virkos model, use also artifact or command trait to give to this model to make it even more crazy. So it's simply amazing, this one, and really quite awesome. It doesn't even cost too much because it's almost the same amount of a normal vampire. But really, if you are going to play with Virkos and you think about a foot vampire, you can really select this one. Okay, it doesn't have the command ability, it doesn't have the option about being a wizard, but if you need something that goes to, I can say, wreck some monsters, it's really something that you have to think about. Now have Belladama Volga that has seen an improvement about its profile. It has the Shemitah that has brought from 3 to 4 attacks and the damage fixed to 2 instead of D3, and I prefer such thing. It is a wizard that makes that you can cast 2 spells in your hero phase and bind 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. It is War Master, so if this unit is included in a Soulblight Gravelords army, it is treated as general even if it's not the mod picked to be the army's general. It has first of the Virkos, so add 1 to the casting, dispelling, and the binding roll for this unit. And remember that you can improve these ones with other abilities. And in addition, if this unit is within 3 inches of any friendly Virkos Star Wars unit, before you allocate a wound or mortal wound, or instead of making a ward roll for a wound or mortal wound that would allocate to this unit, on a 3+, you can allocate this wound or mortal wound to the Dark Wars. So you make them your bodyguard for such model, and it's really characteristic about such model itself. Then we had the anger that it's for all the vampires to a maximum of 6 that you can heal, and it's okay because it has 9 wounds, such model. Then we had Lycan Curse, that is a spell that has a casting value of 7 and a range of 18 inch. Is successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If any models in that unit were slain by this spell, before removing the last slain model, you can add 1 unit of their wounds to your army. The number of models in the unit must be equal to the number of models in the unit that was slain by this spell, so it means that technically you can improve the amount of wounds that you generated, and set up the new unit within 3 inches of the slain models unit, and then remove the slain model from the play. Technically, you can make that this new unit come in close combat with the enemy unit that you targeted. So it can be quite funny in such a way, because you can technically block the enemy unit in that way, and so you can forbid, for example, a redeploy from that unit, because it's in close combat. Then we have Under a Killing Moon, that is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 24 inch. If successfully cast until your next hero phase, if the modified hero roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by a friendly Virkos unit wholly within the caster is 6, the attacker scores 2 hits to the target instead of 1, so it explodes the hits, and make a wound save roll for each hit. So it can be really quite interesting, and this is really a mod that it's quite nice to summon new units about their wolves and use them as a bodyguard for the mod itself. So it's quite nice. I love such mod as miniature. And now had the Koslav the Gatekeeper. This, if you go to see about such model directly, you should say that it's not so great, because, okay, the mod is fantastic, but the profile is not so great. It has 7 wounds, a save of 6, the attacks are the same of a vampire, but technically you should prefer a vampire. But why you should choose this? Because it creates a sort of synergy with the dead workers in an army of Virkos that gain quite a lot about the Virkos themselves. So we had that this as the keeper of the corpse garden, that technically it treat the unit of zombies that workers within, not wholly, but within 9 inch of this model as a sort of bodyguard. On a 2+ you can transfer, as you should done for the necromancer, to those unit of that worker zombies, the wounds and mortal wound that you should suffer with the Koslav. But what is really interesting, it's arise, because once per turn, at the end of your movement phase, you can pick one friendly Virkos that worked zombies unit that has been destroyed and make the replacement with half of the model. It can't be replaced again. And this, it's quite interesting because you don't have to roll the dice. It's the problem about the gravesite, and here you don't have such problem. You automatically do. And so you can make such effort. Moreover, you can make a sort of more combination because the vehicles are the only one that can use the artifacts. And you have the philately that can make the ward, say if the unit are wholly within 9 inch of the worked zombies being 5+. So you can create a sort of circle so much that this model can make even cross combat, suffer wound and mortal wounds, transfer them on 2+ to the unit, and make them that those units themselves are protecting more with the ward. And after you have done this, if that unit is dead or so on, you can make it come back, and you don't have to center on the gravesite or so on that can be occupied, but on the ghost lord, the gatekeeper serves. It's not so easy, but at the same time it has quite combination. Moreover, it's perfect suited if you think about creating an army of dead worked zombies, and this will be perfect about the, I can say, the environment and a sort of theme for the army roster that you can create for the vehicles based on dead worked zombies. And then we have Torgilus the Chamberlain. This it's a model that it's quite peculiar. It has 6 wound, save 6. It's a sort of little necromancer in some way, but it's one of the few models in the Soulblight Gavelords army to have missile weapons, and not bad too. And it's a wizard, so it can cast a spell and unbind a spell eventually. And it has one ability that it's particularly interesting, that it's the Trusted Lieutenant, so that friendly Virkos summonable unit has a ward of 5+, while there are wholly within 12 inch of this unit. So it's a sort of having an improved deathless minions available. So this is really quite interesting if you think about, because this make that this hero, it can be a wizard son, so you can improve in a lot of different ways, and then also improve the wards and try even to damage from the distance, because it has the spell, but it also the missile weapons. It's not maybe the best, but it's really quite having an equilibrium, I say, about such model. And I like too such models, so I like even the idea to have such model on the battlefield so that it can make some cooling, simply having some themed army that could be really quite interesting. And then have Virkos Bloodborne. This it's much better than you can think about. First of all, it's not a hero, so pay attention about such thing. And it's composed of 3 models, which each of these has 3 wounds and a save of 6. But it has a movement of 10 inch. And you have to combine with other things. The first one is that it's elite, and this unit can use commands to their own unit, so it's standalone by itself. And remember that eventually you can use rally, it's not a problem eventually. Then it has Shadowfast, that after the deployment but before the first battle round begins, you can move this unit up to 10 inch. If both players can move unit before the first battle round begins, they must roll off and the winner choose who moves the unit first. This it's perfect combined with Vampiric Agility. When this unit make a move, you can pass across 10 feature as you can fly. So it means that technically you can make that before the first battle round begins, you can move this unit of 10 inch without having problem about the shank feature. And then if you add the first turn, you can make another 10 movement, and you have made 20 inch of movement, and then you can charge. So you can make a sort of threat to the enemy heroes, small heroes ones, or so on. So it's really quite interesting, because it can make a lot of damages or block, for example, some type of unit that can be from shooting and so on. So there are a lot of ways to improve such thing. And moreover, remember that you have also the hanger that each time this unit fight, it can heal the number of wounds allocated. But about this, you have to remember that you can heal, but not make comeback mods. So you can make a mod come back to 3 wounds and not replenish the unit with other mods. Otherwise, it would be quite amazing if that did such thing. So this unit is quite strategical if you think about, because it's a sort of stealth and I can say threatening units more than really damaging one. At the same time, it can be used, for example, to always remember to your opponent that if it disposes its own small mages or so on, they can be hunted by such unit that it's fast, because remember that it's 10 inch of movement and it can bypass technically all the shining features, so it doesn't have to go around. It can really jump from the other side. So amazing. This one it's much more amazing and quite strategical used. Then have Watch Captain Argument that I love as miniature. As profile, it's not so great compared to the White King normal one, because it has a worse save that it has 4+ instead of the normal 3+ of the White King. It's something that it has as ability Cursed Halberd, that if in a modified hit roll for an attack made with a Cursed Halberd, it's 6. That attack cause 2 mortal wounds to the target in addition to any other damage. So at least it's an additional damage. Then we have Discipline Advanced that this unit can use at the double command up to 3 times to friendly Virkos Deathratos unit. So only Virkos and only Deathratos in the same phase. If it does so, no command points are spent for the second and third times this unit issued that command in that phase. So it's nice to relocate and make those units move faster toward some objects and so on. But at the same time, it's a bit problematic because anyway, it's only at the double that makes. So you have to run for that unit, and so you can't make the charge later. And so it's a bit problematic about such. But at least if you think that you need, at least you have the option that it make in such a way that you have 3 for a single command point spent. And remember that you have also Watch Captain Agrim itself that can benefit from such ability. But still, it's not so great. And then we have the Varskir. This is a Virkos unit, specific one, and sincerely, it's nice as model, but not so nice as unit, as profile. It has 8 wound, movement of 8 inches, save of 5+. The amount of attacks are nice, but not so great. It has bounding lips, so that it can try to charge, and this charge can be 18 inch instead of 12 inch. It has 3d6 to roll for the charge instead of 2d6, so it can reach the unit faster, but at the same time, it doesn't fit too much. It has hunger, it can heal to a maximum of 6, doing in close combat wound or mortal wounds, but at the same time, it doesn't have any other rule. It doesn't have fly, it doesn't have something that can make mortal wounds or something that it can make it really quite interesting. Something that, for example, a redeployment thinks that could have been interesting to have from base. So some other rule that could make this quite nice. This is something that I associate like Evergulf, but Evergulf has more options. This it's really something that it's missing. It's an amazing model, but as a rule, it's really quite missing, and it's a pity because I quite like such model. And then had the Kosagi Night Guard. This it's a unit that could be quite interesting. Remember that it's a bodyguard for the Radukar the Wolf. It has 4 wounds, save of 4+, movement 8 inch, so it moves quite fast to be a unit, really. And technically, this should be a sort of giant zombies, and I quite like. They have definitely Vigor that make having a 5+ as word that is much better than their own Deathless minion eventually as basic word, so nice. It has a path maintained that add 1 to the attack characteristic of this unit bandages, while this is wholly within 12 inch of a friendly Radukar the Wolf and Radukar the Beast. Remember that the ability about being the bodyguard is only for Radukar the Wolf, not Radukar the Beast. This it's a unit that it's quite nice. It's quite intriguing to play with Radukar, even without Radukar eventually, but with Radukar at least you have some more bonus eventually. But this is a unit that can be quite nice in an army, for example, of the Worker Zombies, because you have a sort of elite unit to deploy on the battlefield, and I think that it would be quite intriguing at least to see such unit in that way on the battlefield itself. And then we have Lady Annika, that it's a hero of the Virkos, that it's a sort of Vampire Lord, but it has one more wound than Vampire Lord, and worse, say because it has 4+. Still, it can be interesting. It has Anger, so classical for the vampires. It has Supernatural Speed, so that makes that it has a word of 4+. And during the deployment, you can put this in an ambush, so in reserve, and make it when they start the movement phase, at the end of your movement phase, that make put this in the enemy territory more than 9 inch from all enemy units. But what is interesting, it's keys of the blade proportion that make it that at the end of any phase, if any wounds caused by the attack made with this unit blade proportion in that phase were allocated to an enemy hero or monster, and that enemy unit has not been destroyed, worsen the save characteristic of that unit by 1 to a minimum of 6+ for the rest of the battle. Sincerely, this is quite problematic to use, because you should survive, tries to survive. Okay, you have word of 4+, 6 wound, but it's not so simple, moreover against a monster or a hero, so it's quite problematic. And you can try to combine these with some other option, for example, so that you can try to damage the opponent that can be retreating, or you can combine with the battle trait that can let you make that you can battle with this hero and then make another unit battle. You can create some option, but remember that this effect apply at the end of the phase. So if you are able to play and combat in the hero phase, for example, so that you can make the combat, you decrease the save at the end of the phase, and then you have all the other units that can participate to make better the wounding of such a hero or monster that you are against, it could be quite interesting. Otherwise, it's quite problematic to choose such model, even if the mod itself it's amazing and I quite like a lot such miniature itself. Then we have Kritza, that is still a vampire hero of the Virkos. Here anyway we have a specific, it's sunnable. It's one of the unique vampire that it has sunnable. So the other ones that we have seen about unit hero that can be summable are the White Kings. Here we have something that it's a vampire, it has the same ability, so quite nice, because I want to remind you that technically you can recall this unit if destroyed. It's as profile not being a wizard, it's a problem also for this model. It has 6 wound and save 4+. It has the anger, so it can heal itself in close combat. It has scarring retreat. In the combat phase, when you pick this unit to fight, you can say that it will be make a scoring retreat. If you do so, the unit retreat instead of fighting. So it's quite nice, because technically you can try to charge and then busy the opponent and then retreat instead of fighting. So it can be interesting, and you can really choose of if your opponent try to charge you, you can then retreat and leave it aside. Then we have the Venomous Court, that make it that at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit that has an artifact of power and roll a dice. On a 3+, that artifact of power can no longer be used. If it is used and to enhance a weapon, that weapon revert to its form. Here, I'm quite curious if this is something that it lasts all the battle, but I think yes, otherwise it will be problematic, because it works only if it is in combat phase. But even still, with such a combination of the score retreat and this, could be that you can try eventually to charge the opponent, then to make that you at the start of the battle, the combat phase, you can make the 3+ to disable the artifact and retreat not to fight, so that you can make, for example, other units that can be influenced by the artifact in close combat or so on, or anyway fight, and so not having the problem about the bonus gained by the artifact for the enemy. So there are some ways to play with such model, but you have to plan really quite attentively how you want to use such model, because technically you can leave, because it's summonable also in the site, and so then summon literally on the battlefield when you need, for example, to go to hunt something or so on. So there are things that can be quite useful, but remember that the amount of artifact the opponent can use are quite limited. So don't think that this can be really quite changeable, because it could be quite problematic. But it has quite a lot of pros if you understand how you can play and synergize it with your army. And I had the Vampire Lord on Dragon Zombie. This model is improved compared to before of the previous Battletome of the Soulblight Gavelords, so much that we have 16 wounds instead of 14. We had an improvement about the melee weapons. For example, the Death Lance has seen a rand 2 instead of rand 1 before. The Vampiric Sword, the alternative of the Death Lance, we have 5 attack instead of 4, and 3 wounds is moved to be 2 wounds, so much better. And the damages are fixed about the sword, so I think that it's quite a gain, so that you don't roll too few eventually, so nice. Has been changed the things that we've seen for the Dragon Zombie in the World Rai, so we had the snappy mode that now it has a better damages, so it's something that it's quite nice, and improved also the rand, that it's -3 instead of -2 that it was before. It has changed also the pestilential breath, that now it's with better range, because it's 12 inch instead of the previous 9 inch, and it can technically make even more damages than before. So I think that it's quite nice. And the damage table, it's more solid now than before, so I think that we gained quite a lot about such comparison. And we can see about the abilities. It's still a wizard that can cast one spell in your own hero phase and apply one spell in the enemy hero phase. It has fly, hunger, that is the same that we've seen before, to a maximum of 6 wounds that it can be cured if you inflict wound or mortal wound to the opponent in the close combat. It has defense charge, that it's the same that we've seen for Mordrai, so that the defense has a rend characteristic of 3 and the damage 3 if this model made a charge in the same turn, so add 1 to rend and damages. Then we had terror. Enemy units cannot receive the inspiring presence command where there are within 3 inches of any friendly unit with this ability. It's amazing, because it's a way to have basic an ability that otherwise you should have command abilities and the spells or so on to activate, so quite nice. Then we have Curse of Exsanguination, that make that you has a casting value of 7 and a range of 18 inch, and it's also recast. Pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffer 1 mortal wound, and if that mortal wound is allocated to a model and that model is not slain, you can continue to roll on a 3+. You make to that model another mortal wound till it's or the wound negated or the model is slain. So it's quite interesting, because remember that it's applied to a single model. So if you apply to a model with 2 wounds, when it diseases the model, you can't continue to roll, it stop. But it's perfect to target, for example, some chart or so on that maybe they don't have a good word or so on, or units that are big monsters, for example, that doesn't have word or so on. It's quite nice to be able to continue. Okay, it's continuously on a 3+, but technically it's till you are able to kill that model or you roll off, or the word is saving the model itself. So this is quite interesting. So this model, it's quite versatile, both that you see for shooting, because the breath it's quite good, or to see about the magic, or to see about the cross combat, because it makes quite a lot amount of damages, and it's quite to see about this. You have only to select which Dynasty or Legion you want to insert this model in, because there are quite a lot of big matches about such model. And then we have Kado Ezekiel, and here if you play the Virkos, I'd really suggest you to think about taking such model, because it's a Vampire Lord upgraded version, literally, because it's something amazing. It has 6 wounds instead of 5, and the rand of its word, it's 2 instead of 1 of the normal Vampire Lord. It's still a wizard, so it can cast 1 spell in your hero phase and combine 1 spell in the enemy hero phase. It has hunger as all the vampires. It has Court of the Lost. So at the start of your hero phase, if this unit is on the battlefield, you can say that it will summon a spirit from the Court of the Lost. If you do so, pick one of these effects that we are going to see, and this effect lasts till your next hero phase. So we have Spirit of the Steed. This unit has a move characteristic of 14 inch. This is perfect when you need to reach an objective, or you want to escape, or you want to move towards an enemy, and so then charge, and you want to be sure to be able to do this. You have Spirit of the Tutor. Add 1 to the casting, unbending, and dispelling roll for this unit. I think that it's quite useful eventually. And then we have the other option, Spirit of the Fallen. If an attack made by this unit wounds the target, that attack causes a number of mortal wounds to the target equal to the damage weapon characteristic and the attack seconds ends. So it means that if you select this, you don't even need the rend, you do directly mortal wounds. This is something that it's amazing, really, because it means that you can decide to concentrate yourself to the movement, to the magic, or to the combat. It's up to you. Remember that you have to choose only one of these. And I have Retribution or Salvation, so that it's a spell that has casting value of 6 and the range of 18 inch. If successfully cast, pick one unit within range and visible to the caster. If that unit is an enemy unit, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. If that unit has the Chaos keyword, it suffers 3 mortal wounds instead of D3. If that unit is a friendly Gravelord summonable unit, you can heal up D3 wounds allocated to that unit, or if no wounds are allocated to that unit, you can return a number of slay mod to that one, having a combined wound characteristic of D3 or less. This is practically perfect, because you can have the spell that can make damage to the opponent units, or heal and eventually make back some of the models of summonable units. And they don't have to be Virkos, because they say Soulblight Gavelords summonable units, so it means also eventually the heroes. It's really amazing. Close combat magic, you can choose what you want, and this give you those. Really, it's something perfect. And remember that being Virkos, you can even give him an artifact and the command trait, so you can really decide how you want to play with such mod, and you will be able to do it. Then we have the Vampire Lord. Here we have a mod that, compared to the previous version of the Soulblight Gravelords Battletome, we have an improvement about the attacks, that now it's 5 attacks instead of 4, and the damage that is fixed 2 instead of being D3, and I prefer like this. This has the option about being a wizard, as usual, so you can cast one spell in the hero phase and combine one spell in the enemy hero phase. Compared to Kado Ezekiel, has one thing more, that it's fly, so it can fly, instead Kado Ezekiel can't. Then we have the Hunger, that it's a classical ability about the vampire, so it can heal itself if damage the opponent units with wound or mortal wounds in close combat. Then we have Crimson Fist, so that once per turn, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit, and add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit melee weapons until the end of that phase. The same unit cannot benefit from this ability more than once per phase, so you can't have 2 Vampire Lords using the same ability on the same unit, so that you can improve a lot their attacks. So this is the classical one. Sincerely, I would have preferred some more wounds, but it's not bad. It's something that being able to fly, it can make that it can hide, fly over the obstacle units and so on, and try to hunt what you need. But since you have to think what you need, because their bonuses are quite nice, are better in something that you can control eventually and be protected by units and so on, eventually we're using some units as bodyguards so on. Still, it's not so great, but it remains one of the best models to have and feel the option about gaining the vampire spells and so on to use in your rooster. So this is quite intriguing, not the best, but a quite standard, and better to say, the vampire standard to use in your army rooster. Then had the Blood Knights, that are the mounted vampires, and it's a unit composed of only vampires. You have 5 models, remember, to begin with. Here we can see some change about the melee weapons of the unit that see the blade or lance see an improvement or range of 1 inch, so now it's 2 inch instead of 1, and an improvement of the rend that now it's 2 instead of 1. So much better, because it means that if you buy more models, it's easier to reach the range to hit, so more models that can damage the opponent units, and it's better to make wounds move on, so it's quite amazing. The champion, as usual, add 1 to the attack characteristic of that model specific one, lance or blade. Then we had the standard build that 1 in every 5 models. Remember that if you buy multiple ones, better to have another standard, just that you had to remove this model of the standard and you need it. So you can roll word save rolls of 1 for this unit for the purpose of the deathless minion battle trait if this unit includes any standard bearers. So quite nice and quite useful, because it means that you are always able to repeat the deathless minions, so nice. You have the hunger so that this one can heal itself, but remember that you can't bring back models killed, slain, so you can heal on up to the one that has suffered wounds, so from 1 or 2 to 3 you can't recover models lost, at least for now. We have then Riders of Ruin. These models can pass across other models with a wound characteristic of 3 or less in the same manner as a model can fly. After this unit has moved, roll a dice for each enemy unit that has a wound these models passed across, and on the 2+, that enemy unit suffer D3 mortal wounds. It has, I want to remember you, 10 inch as movement, so it's really quite interesting, and eventually you can think about using eventually at the double to make that you can pass more units and try to make damages in such a way using mortal wounds, because maybe you don't want to make some battery or so on. Maybe you have 1 or 2 model left and you want to leave this model being able to do such passages. It can be a good thing eventually, so it's quite interesting. And then we have Martial Fury that add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit melee weapon if this unit made a charge in the same turn. This ability has no effect on attack made by this unit mounts. So it means that if you charge, you have now 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wounds, 2 rend, 2 damages. So it becomes really quite amazing in close combat, this one. So you can really play a lot. You can eventually make that you move over the units that then you want to charge. And so you can make damages and then even improve the damage that when you charge in. So it's really quite interesting, and it's some unit that you can really think as a heavy elite to use to damage the opponent army. Then had the Vargates. Here we had the same profile that we see in the previous Battletome as the profile itself and the weapons. We had that this unit can fly, it has the wings, it has the champion that add 1 to the attacks of this model, and we have then the abilities. The first is Blood Maddened Frenzy, that if the modified hit roll for an attack made by this unit is 6, that attack score 2 hits to the target instead of 1, make the wound roll and save roll separately for each hit. It has the anger, so it can heal the model, and here it's even better because you can heal up to 4 wounds, so not bad. But remember that you can't use the hunger to recover models that you lost about such unit. And I've had the Death Descent that during the deployment you can set up this unit instead of the battlefield in reserve, and if you do so at the end of your movement phase you can set up this unit on the battlefield more than an inch from all enemy units, so everywhere on the battlefield. This becomes really quite interesting because it can create ambushes. It's something that it's not so sure that you can charge after because it's more than an inch, so it's not a small rolling. But this has the advantage to cost a few points, so even if it's not the best that you can gain, it's still something that it's fast because it has 12 inch of movement. It can anyway be placed everywhere on the battlefield, and it can really make some sort of pressures on the opponent. Unit of even 3 models, so the basic one, can be quite interesting to be positioned so that the opponent has always to be wary of such unit. It's not maybe not the best, but surely interesting to have eventually in your army. And remember that in a Avengorii or Legion Knight army, this is battle line. So eventually you can save quite a lot of points thinking about having this unit, about being battle lines and so on, and using different strategies for your army. And then had the Askurgan Two Blades. This is a unit that we have seen in Warcry, and these are the ascetic vampires that we have seen in the background in the previous video, so you can find it in the description. Here we can find something quite long as the taste, because it has 2 wounds, 6 of movement, 4 save, for pass and save. It has different options about attacking, and it has the champion that in this unit can be the Askurgan Exemplar. That mod has a wound characteristic of 4 and is armed with paired Askurgan blades instead the Askurgan weapons. Remember that this unit is of 8 mods, so it means that it can become really quite interesting if you think about the amount of wounds that you can gain in such unit. It has Cursed Blood, so 1 in every 8 mods in this unit can be a Cursed Blood, and you can have anyway only 8 mods. You can't amplify and upgrade such unit. Cursed Blood has a wound characteristic of 4 and is armed with elongated claws and slovenly move instead of Askurgan weapons. Again, another way to improve the amount of wounds that such models has. It has the anger, so again you can heal, and remember that you can't replenish with these the slain models. We have gut branching hole, so at the end of the charge phase, if this unit includes any Cursed Bloods, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and say that the Cursed Blood will unleash a gut branching hole, so it will hold, okay? And if you do so, roll a dice, add 1 to the roll for each Cursed Blood in this unit, but remember that technically you can have only 1, okay? And add 1 to the roll for each Cursed Blood in this unit. On a 4+, the strike last effect applies to that enemy unit in the following phase. So sincerely, it's not bad at all. Then we have Creed of the Beast. So subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attack made with melee weapons by enemy monsters, only monsters, that target this unit. In addition, each time an enemy monster unit is destroyed by attacks made by this unit, add 3 inch to this unit move characteristic and add 1 to the attack characteristic of this unit melee weapons for the rest of the battle. So they can improve the clean faster and even better at combat. So this is really quite interesting, because it's like having in a small amount of mods a lot of vampires. I like yes and not, because you have 2 special mods in 8 mods that are available, but at the same time it's a bit problematic, because remember that each time that you lost a model, you have to remember that it's lost. You can't recover such mods. So it's nice, but you have to pay quite a lot of attention about how you want to play them, because you have to pay attention because they have a movement and so on. So you have really to make such models quite nice. The advantage is that the bonus that gain from the Dynasty or the Legion, it's applicable because they don't have a specific Dynasty to be part of. So this means that these models can gain also the bonuses gained by that Legion or Dynasty, and so improve even more. This could be something to try, because you have really to try and understand if it's worth or not to play with such type of unit. And then had the Bloodseeker Palanquin. This is a mod that I always loved, but not in such version, such combination. Anyway, now it's a bit better, so we can go to see. Remember that this is a hero, a vampire, a wizard, but not a monster. Remember such thing, that it's important. It has 12 wound and save of 4+. It gained the improvement of the vampire as profile of the weapon, so now it has also the 5 attacks and 2 damages. The damage table is improved, so now it's much better than before. It has still the wizard option, so it can attempt to cast 1 spell in your hero phase and combine 1 spell in the enemy hero phase. It has fly. It has anger to a maximum of 6. It can heal if it makes wounds or mortal wounds in the combat phase. It has a promising concussion. The first time, only the first time, an enemy hero is slain by an attack made by this unit, For the rest of the battle, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly vampire units while there are wholly within 12 inch of this unit, so it means also this one because it's a vampire. And you can carry out 2 different actions with this unit at the start of the hero phase instead of 1. Remember that you can do such only if you kill a hero, enemy hero. Then you have the Wheel of the Damned. In your shooting phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit within range of the Wheel of the Damned ability, the range that it changes based on the amount of wounds that it suffered, such unit. And on a 4+, that unit suffered D3 mortal wounds. The advantage of such shooting is that it targets all the units in such range, so it's nice. Then we have Blood Siphon. It's a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12 inches, so quite short. It's actually cast pick one enemy hero, so it targets only heroes, with a range invisible to the cast, and roll a dice. On a 1 to 2, it suffers 1 mortal wounds. 3 to 4, D3 mortal wounds. 5 to 6, D6 mortal wounds. So you have to combine everything to be able to apply the Promising Concoction. So the spells, the shooting, and the close combat, and then you are able to make such one, because the ability Promising Concoction works if you kill with such model, but it doesn't say how, so you can use all the options available, not only the close combat so on, but all the things. Sincerely, I find it much better than before, but it targets and it hunt only heroes to gain the bonuses. Otherwise, you can't use the spell, or you can't use the Promising Concoction. So about the action, only if you kill with such model, you are a hero, you are able to apply. So it's good because there is the Wheel of the Damned, but if I want to use the Wheel of the Damned, I'd use another unit, sincerely. So this is a model that always promise, but in my opinion, it's not so great to do what it promises. So it's nice, but I prefer some other things with the same model itself, but other options. And then we had the Mortis Engine. Here I want to remember some things. Remember that even if it's conducted by a technical necromancer, it's not a wizard, it's not a hero, and it's not a vampire, it's a Deathmage, and it's not a monster. So pay attention about such things because they are quite important. It's a model that has 12 wounds and save 4+. The profile has seen a better about damage table that now it's more solid, so completely welcome. Still fly. It has the rule of the reliquary that you have to pay quite attention about. Each time a friendly Soulblight Gravelords wizard successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, unbinds a spell, or dispel an end spell, place 1 reliquary counter beside this unit to a maximum of 6 once per battle. Only once, in your hero phase, you can say that this unit will unleash the energies of the reliquary. If you do so, each enemy unit within 6 inch of this unit suffer a number of mortal wounds equal to the number of the reliquary counters beside this unit, so maximum 6 mortal wounds, and within 6 inch, not so much. Then we had the Wheel of the Damned. In your shooting phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit within the range that changes based on the damage that this unit suffer, and it makes on a 4+ to have to that unit suffer D3 mortal wounds, so a good way to cast an amount of dice on the range, so nice. Then we have Nexus of Death Energy. Each time you pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit using the Deathly Invocation battle trait, you can either heal up to D3 plus 3 wounds allocated to that unit instead of 3, or if no wounds has been allocated to that unit, you can return a number of model to that unit having a combined number of wound characteristic of D3 plus 3 instead of 3 or less. So it's a way to add the wounds, so D3 wounds more. It's quite nice, but at the same time you have to ask yourself if it's worth, because it's not a wizard. The reliquary, it's something that you can dismiss. The ability that you have really to look at is the Wheel of the Damned and the Nexus of Death Energy. It can be nice if you think about improving the recovered models or the healed one. So there are quite a lot of things that can be quite nice, but it applies only if you play a lot Soulblight Gravelords Summable, and eventually that depends by how you want to play it, because the real only two abilities that it has are the Will of the Dummy and the Nexus, and all the other things they are not so great. So you have really to pay attention about what you need if you have points that you want to save to play with this, or you want to use some other things. It's nice, but at the same time it's not so great. But anyway, it's something that could be intriguing, at least, because think about having two of these on the battlefield. It means that you can recover quite a lot of models on the summonable unit. You can make a lot of mortal wounds to the enemy units thanks to the Will of the Damned. So there are a lot of ways to play with such model. Having only a single one of these, not so much. Having multiple of these could be intriguing, at least. Then had the Coven Throne, that it's literally one of my favorite models to play with, and the best combination, in my opinion, about the Coven Throne, Mortis Engine, and Bloodseeker Palanquin. Remember that it's not a monster. It has still 12 wounds on save 4+. It has gained 1 attack for the Stiletto and fixed damage 2, but it lost 2 attacks for the assistants, so the companions, that now has 6 attacks instead of the 8 attacks, but they're at least fixed ones, so they don't decrease based on the amount of wounds that is after. The detriment table is much more stable, so I think that it's a gain. It's still a wizard that can tap to cast one spell in your hero phase and unbound one spell in the enemy hero phase. It has still fly. It has anger that we have seen. It can heal itself to a maximum of 6 and so on. It has something that you have to pay attention. Tactical Insight. This unit can issue the same command up to 2 times in the same phase. If it does, so each command must be received by a friendly Soulblight Gravelords Summable unit, and no command is spent for the second time this unit issued the command in that phase. So it means that you double these things. Think simply about having Inspiring Presence, or having all-out attack, all-out defense, or rally to recover models in this unit. It's really quite important. Remember, only Soulblight Gravelords Summable unit, but still it's quite nice. And remember that there are also heroes that are summable, and they are included. So quite a lot of things. Then we have Scrying Pool. If you take the first turn in the current battle round, this unit can attempt to cast 1 extra spell in your hero phase. If you take the second turn in the current battle round, you receive 1 extra command point. So quite nice. And really, because you can gain or spells or command points. So really good. Then we have Undying Servitude, that it's a spell that has casting value of 7 and a range of 12 inch. With successfully cast, pick one enemy hero with a wound characteristic of 6 or less, within range and visible to the caster. This unit suffer D3 mortal wounds. If that enemy hero is slain by this spell, so remember, it has to be slain by this spell. Before removing the hero from the play, you can add 1 Vampire Lord to your army and set up that unit within 3 inch of the slain hero, and then remove the slain hero from play. This is really quite intriguing, because it's a thing that lets you having the option about gaining new models, new heroes. And technically, if that hero is within 3 inch of another unit, the enemy one, it's in close combat. So you gain and still have some bonuses. So really, this spell, it's not something that you have to count on, because it's not something that you have really to have all your focus about. But this model, it's really quite nice. I like the Scrying Pool. I like the Tactical Insight. This is really a model that is strategical, and so I quite like. Think about having, like I do, 2 of this and a lot of summon units, and you have really the option about with a small amount of command points to control a great amount of units. So I think that it's something quite nice and quite amazing. And then we had the Zombie Dragon. Here we have seen something related with the Vordrai and the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, but here we can consider better about such mod, and then seen quite a lot of changes. The wounds are still 14 on save for plus, so always amazing. The profile of battle is changed in the way that now the snapping move is on rend 3 instead of 2 and fixes 3 damages. So technically it's a bit better of before, so it's not bad. And what has changed, it's the Pestillion Breath, that now it has a range of 12 inch, that we see quite soon, it's quite important. It has D6 attacks instead of a single one. It hits and wound fixed, so it's good. It has a range of 1, but it has 3 damages. It can be better or worse, but remember that at least every time that one of such attacks pass, you are sure the amount of damage that it does. So in some way it's better. Obviously it has a better damage table that we're seeing for all the other mods that has this. And so it means that it gain the better attacks longer along the battle. It has fly. It has the rule tarot, that it's the new one that we're seeing for the other models on Dragon Zombie that come from such model. So enemy units that are within 3 inches of such units that are this same ability cannot receive Inspiring Presence. So it's amazing, this one. But one thing that it's important, it's Loathsome Descent. So during deployment, instead of setting up this unit on the battlefield, you can put in the reserve, and if you do so, at the end of your movement phase, you can set up this unit on the battlefield more than 9 inch from all enemy units. If for other units it could be problematic, this unit, remember that it has a shooting, and then it can hunt really hard, because it means that you can deploy this on the battlefield, and then if you start with the first turn, you can gain that you have the movement, hunt the unit, shooting other units, assault and charge others. So this it's amazing. This it's really a way to make that this model can be really something that your opponent has to be wary, completely and every time wary of such thing, because even if he try to prevent this unit to be ambushing in some way, he can position himself closer and then goes to the enemy, really. And then to remember that in the Avengorii army, this becomes also battle line, and it can be quite fun to have quite a lot of zombie dragons available on the battlefield, or a combination with tarot guests or so on. So it's funny and it's nice. Then we had the tarot guest that it's almost the same that we've seen for the previous Soulblight Gravelords Battletome. It's almost the same, but now it's even better, because we have still 14 wounds on a save of 4+. We have the skeleton talons that see a change about the damage, that it's now 2 and not D3, but the amount of attacks that it does, it's now 7 instead of 4. So 3 more attacks available, and even with fixed damage, it's even better like this. We have that the detriment table is improved, so it gain these options much longer. The Death Shriek is still the same, so it does not use the sequence of the attacks to make such one, but you roll a dice and add to the Shriek value to the one that you see in the table related, and this is compared to the bravery characteristic of the target, and the target suffers the difference of the rolling più, the bonus, against the bravery characteristic of this total. So it's quite interesting, because it's always a way to make a lot of mortal wounds on units that have a small amount of bravery. So nice. It always has fly. It has the Gopi move, that if an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with this fanged move is 6, so natural 6. The target suffers 6 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends, so don't make to wound and to save. It has infested, so if this unit is destroyed before it is removed from play, each enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, so even dying can still be quite crazy, and I like quite a lot. And remember that in an army of the Avengorii Dynasty, this can be also a bottom line, so it can be really quite interesting. So This is a model that can be really quite heavy in damaging the opponent. You have really to choose about this and the zombie dragon eventually, because they have different options available. Moreover, because now the zombie dragon has about the redeployment and so on. So I think that it's really quite interesting to play and see the differences eventually, but they are really quite amazing, and you can really play quite a lot with such things, because you have really a lot of potential about such monsters on the battlefield. And then had the Viking. This is a unit that has been improved quite a lot compared to the previous one, because first of all, it's a summable unit and it's a hero, so it gained a lot of bonuses related about the summable unit, as the graveside and so on, so really good. It has still 5 wounds on a 3+ and movement 4 inch. It has the same profile as weapon as the Vampire Lord, so 5 attacks instead of the 4 before, 2 fixed damage instead of the 3. And then we had the rules. We have beheading strike that it improved quite a lot. If the modified hit roll for an attack made with this weapon is 6, the attack causes 2 mortal wounds to the target in addition to any damage that it inflicts. So amazing, really, because it's an addition and make 2 mortal wounds each time. So really nice. And I have something that I think it will be factor quite soon, because once per turn at the start of your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Death Rattle unit of Graveguard unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit. Here they are treated like names of the unit, and it shouldn't be not a problem technically, but if you think that it exists the Sepulchral Guard and the Sons of Valmorn, those have the keyword of Death Rattle skeletons and Graveguard, so technically if it's the name of the unit, they should not be able to be used this ability on. Otherwise, if it's a keyword, so they should be on marked in bold, they should be able to gain such ability on. So we had to clarify, I think, such thing. Until your next hero phase, if the modified hit roll for an attack made by that unit is 6, that attack score 2 hits to the target instead of 1. Make wound and save roll separately for each hit. So this it's really a nice model. Remember, this is a summable unit, so you can play quite a lot, and you can give the eventually some other option. For example, think about Dark Tomb to make this a way to be a sort of option about being the mage. Think about giving the Philateri to make that such unit gain the word 5+, because it's a summonable unit and gain, and also make the other unit have such option. So you can really make a lot of different things that can make such model even more interesting. And really, this it's a model that if before you couldn't think that it was better to take something else, now you can think that it's worth to take and to play with really a lot of satisfaction. And then we had the Black Knights. Here we have almost the same that we've seen for the previous Battletome of the Soulblight Gavelords, so still 2 wounds, 5+ of save. A pity, because I would have hoped that they would gain 4+ as saving, but okay. Movement 12 inch. We have the same amount of attacks and so on. The champion is still 1 more attack for its barrel lance. We have still the bearer that every 5 models we can make 1 model having the standard bearer, and reroll the wardrobe of 1 for this unit for the purpose of the Deathless Minion battle trait. And really, here remember always that if you make that you reinforce such unit, always have such additional 1. Then you have the musician, so 1 every 5 model in this unit can be a musician, and treat the charge rolls if they are less than 6 as being 6. So amazing, because it means that you are sure always to be able to charge 6 inch for sure. So even if you technically fail or so on, you are sure that you can do. It's nice. Then had the Deathly Charge that has changed as ability. So after this makes a unit make a charge move, you can pick 1 enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit. If you do so, roll 2 dice for each model in this unit. For each 5+, that target suffer 1 mortal wound. So quite nice. Moreover, if you combine with the Waking on Skeleton Steed, because that one is making this ability on a 4+ instead of 5+, and are 2 for each these rules, 2 for each model. So it means that bigger units can make you have the possibility to gain more of such. So I think that it's really quite amazing. This is the real option about such unit, but remember that it's summonable. Being summonable, it means that you can replenish such models. So it's really quite welcome as thing, and you can really think about making combinations so that you can take this unit always replenished, and when you can charge, it can make quite a lot of damages. Then we had the Grey Guard. I want to remind you that this is technically the same that we see in the previous Battletome of the Soulblight Gavelords. It's still summonable, and I want to remind you that it's important such keyword on such unit. It has still 1 wound and save 5+, movement 4 inch. The profile of the weapon are the same, other than the grieved white blade that is seen the hit roll and wood roll flipped. So, but at the end it's the same if you don't have any bonuses about. Then you had that if you take the shield, you have a save of 4+ instead of 5+ as before. The champion add 1 to the attacks of its own weapons, melee ones. The standard beer is 1 on 10, and it makes it that you can reload the ones of the deathless minion rolling words. And want to remember you always take, if you take the upgrade, so you take the reinforced part of the units, always put in the unit the other standards, so that if you lose one for any reason, you have the others to keep this effect on. You have the musician, so every time you charge less than the 6 in a roll, anyway, you can charge 6 inch, so nice. We had the cursed weapon that make that if an unmodified wound roll for an attack made with melee weapons made by this unit is 6, it causes 1 mortal wound to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts, and this combined perfectly with the ability about the Lord of the Champion Bones of the White King. Those ones are the ones that make this unit gain the doubling, for example, the hit on a 6, and with this you can make mortal wound on a 6. So you can try to double the attacks and then try to make mortal wounds in addition to the normal wounds that you make. It's not so simple, but at least it's a nice bonus. So this it's a unit that even if you think that it's quite nice, it can be quite intriguing against the opponent, because anyway it has a lot of potential. Remember anyway that you have other options eventually to choose, and you have to understand which one do you prefer. Then I had the Necromancer that I can say that it has seen a decrease in power. Still, it's something that it's quite useful, but a bit less than before. So now it has 5 wounds as before, same 6+ save, same 5 inch of movement. The attacks in close combat are to hit and wound on a 4+ instead of before 3+. Damage 2 instead of D3, but this again, it's the hit and wound that it's a problem. It's still a wizard, obviously, that it has a spell to cast in your hero spell phase and 1 spell to unbind in the enemy hero phase. Remember that it's a Deathmage anyway, so it came from the Lord of the Damages. It has undead minions that it's worse than before, because if this unit is within 3 inch of any friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit before you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this unit, or instead of making a ward roll for a wound or mortal wound that would be allocated to this unit, roll a dice, and on 4+, before it was on a 3+, that wound or mortal wound is allocated to one of those friendly units instead to this unit, so they are technically bodyguards. Then we had the Van Snell Dance Macabre that has changed, because before it made you attack twice. Now instead it has a casting value of 6 and a range of 18 inch. It's actually cast, pick one friendly Soulblight Gavelords summonable unit wholly within range, visible to the caster and within 3 inch of any enemy unit. That unit can immediately fight. This means that it fight in the close combat one, and this it's quite interesting this way, because before you had to wait the close combat and attack twice. Instead, now this it make you attack immediately, so it is good. But at the same time, before you could choose a unit and then wait that one goes to close combat, and eventually even attack twice, because it was also to apply in the enemy hero, in the enemy phase. Now it has immediate attack, so it's good, but you have to pay attention. Obviously, this one, the first thing that I think it's to apply, for example, to a Grey Guard, because in that way it will be the maximize about a summonable unit that can inflict damages eventually, or eventually that work at zombies. So it's quite nice, but at the same time a bit less nice than before. So you have to understand if it's worth now to take such necromancer as your unit or not. It's up to you. And I've had the other work at zombies. This is a unit that has seen quite a lot of changes, small ones but important ones. So now remember that it's a summer unit, but has gained a save of 6+. So without rend from the opening unit, it means that you have one more option to save the models, still 1 wound and 4 inch as movement, but has changed the attacks that now has 2 attacks on a 5+ and 4+ to wound. So it improved the amount of attacks and the option about wounding, so quite amazing. We had changed also about how they work about the drag down and turn apart and the newly dead. So now the drag down and turn apart, it's make that roll a dice each time a mod in this unit is slain by an attack made with a melee weapon. On a 5+, the attacking unit suffer 1 mortal wound. So it's quite amazing because it means that you can really kill a lot. It's an amazing one. Moreover, remember that with the newly dead, at the end of the combat phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy mod that has been slain caused by these unit attacks in that phase. For each 2+, you can add 1 that work as zombies mods to this unit. And remember that this can bring the number of mods up to what it was the initial amount of the mods of the unit. And remember that this unit is perfect combined with the corpse cart, because it can make that the worker zombies can target a lot of options about, but we'll see better later. So this it's a unit that it can make quite a lot of problematic things. So think that if you take 1 or 2 units of the worker zombie, think about taking also the corpse cart, and you can gain quite a lot of damage from a basic unit. This is a massive amount of mods, so you can really absorb and make hit back with creating a lot of potential damages, because technically you are even happy if the enemy kill your zombies, because technically you make the opponent one gain back a lot of mortal wounds. So it's quite problematic, but prepare to have some inspiring presence near this, because otherwise it will be, I can say, a trouble to maintain this unit up. But still, there are a lot of ways to replenish such mods, so it's good to be summonable for the Deathmage zombies. Now had the Dark Wolves, and these are something important to remember. First of all, they are summonable, and second, they are dead workers. And about being dead workers, remember about the action for the Virkos Dynasty that can replenish the mods, so it can be interesting. Then had that it has still 2 wounds, save 5+, movement at 10 inch. It has 2 attacks, hit on 4 and wound on 4. Remember that the champion is 1 every 10 mods, so if you reinforce such unit, you have more champions available, and it has 1 more attack. It's always welcome. It has lost the ability that it has about the shrinking charges, so the one that added the wounds when charging, but again something quite important that it was of the worker zombies before, and it's that on the hunt this unit is eligible to fight in the combat phase if it is within 6 inch of an enemy unit instead of 3 inch, and it can move an extra 3 inch when piling. So it can be really quite interesting to be able to move close to enemy unit, and so be able to be engaged with that enemy unit without having to charge. So it's quite nice, this one, and you can a lot of improvement. Obviously, the must about this unit are about with the Virkos Dynasty, but it can give quite a lot of bonuses also to the other units or the other dynasty and legends. So I think that this is quite an interesting one. And about the Virkos, remember that there is about dev action to bring a unit complete one to your side for free. So it's nice, and you have really to take notice about such one, because it can be one of the fastest units that you can play with. Then had the Felbats. This is an intrigue unit because it's still summable, so it's always amazing, but in the Legion Knight they become battle line, and so they gain quite a lot. They have 3 wounds, save 6 plus, movement 14 inch. They gain about the attacks that now they do 2 damages instead of 1, so really welcome. They have the fly, obviously. They have the anger, so they can heal up for the wound, the mortal wound. But remember that you can heal, you can't add up other mods. So if a mod is slain, you will have a lot of other ways to replenish the mods, but not the hunger. Pay attention. And then you have the new rule that it's really quite important because it's single mind ferocity. This unit can retreat and still charge later in the turn. In addition, at the end of any phase, if any enemy models were slain by wounds caused by these unit attacks in that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristic of these elongated fangs for the rest of the battle. So this is really quite important, because here you have to remember that you can retreat and still charge. So it means that you are really quite free to move up and down. Then remember that at the end of any phase, if you slain models, you gain attacks for this unit for the rest of the battle. So it means that technically you can still continue to do such. And remember that it perfectly combines, for example, with the Necromancer, because it makes you fight in the hero phase. And so you can make, if you are able to gain some models lane, gain more attacks, and so continue to improve such thing. And remember that you can replenish such unit. So this it's really becoming better and better. It's something that it's worth to replenish eventually, to have at least 1 unit of such that can move crazy along the battlefield and try to kill something, or anyway try to take time so that it can retreat and still come back, eventually improving the attacks too. So really quite nice. And then we had the corpse card. Here we have something that before it was 2 different was codes that has been combined in single one, and it's okay that is so. But I want to say one thing before analyzing the was code itself. We have the keyword that works on such one. And I want to remind you that we have the action about the pack alpha in the Virkos Dinasty that add the 3 models to a friendly unit of Virkos that works, even making that it can surpass the limitation about the models of that unit. I don't think that it's the case, so I think that it will be fucked. So don't try to add other corpse card to such unit, because otherwise it will be quite problematic as things. So I don't think that it will be available such. This unit has 6 wound, save 6 plus, 4 inch as movement, so it moves at the speed of the worker zombies. It has the profile that is the same that we've seen before, and at the end it can create a lot of damages. It has the Shishan relic, so you can have the Unholy Lodestone or the Balefar Blazer, so you can choose which one you want, or add 1 to the casting roll for friendly Soulblight Gravelords Wizard wholly within 2 inch of any friendly unit that have this option, or subtract 1 from casting rolls for enemy wizard within 12 inch of any units that has the Balefar Razor. Sincerely, I would try the first option, because it's easier to be wholly within 12 inch of a friendly Soulblight Gavelords Wizard than being close to the enemy wizard. So, okay. And then we have Locus of the Undead. If the modified wound roll for an attack made by a friendly dead worker zombie unit wholly within 12 inch of any friendly unit with this ability is 6, that attack causes 1 mortal wound to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts. So this combined with the worker zombies is crazy, because it means that you can make the mortal wounding, and if you are killed, you wound doing mortal wounds on a 5 plus to the enemy. So it's something that it's quite amazing. If you play about 1 corpse card every 2 units of that worker zombies, could be quite interesting. Remember about the wholly within 12 inch, but still it's something that I suggest you to take note. But remember that it has only 6 wounds, so kill such unit because it can't hide. Pay attention because it's easy, and so eventually it's a unit that could be easily removed from the battlefield, and so you lose such bonuses. But I think that it's worth to try to gain such same abilities. Then had the Fratos Skeletons, and this it's a unit that more massive it is, more standalone can be, really. And we see soon why. It's summonable. Remember about such keyword because it's really important. It has 1 wound, save 5+, move of 4 inch. It has 1 attack on a 4 on a 3+, and there is only 1 profile. The champion simply had 1 more attack. There is the standard ability that 1 every 10 models can make that you can reroll the ones on the world row for the Deathless Minions battle trait failed. Remember to add for each reinforced one the standards. A pity that there is not the part about being the musician, because it would be nice. Anyway, now we see why more you reinforce such unit, better it is. Because we have 2 amazing rules. The first one is Skeleton Legend, that it's improved compared to before. So at the start of the combat phase, roll a dice for each slain mod from this unit. It means that it's not that you have to be in close combat, but at the start of the combat. It's important. And you roll a dice for each slain mod. So more models have you lost, slain, or so on, more models you can try to make come back. Because on a 4+, you can tune once slain model for this unit. So it's quite important because really you can really replenish by themselves the models in such unit. It's amazing, even if without having to use the spells or so on to make them come back. It's amazing, this one. And I have one thing that make again the reinforcement really important, because improve the rank characteristic of these melee weapons by 1 if the number of models in this unit is greater than the number of models in the target unit. So you can gain the rand for such unit. You have to be surpassing the amount of model, even by 1, but if you have more model than the enemy one, you have a rand 1. So you can replenish your models and you can gain the rand. Amazing, really. This can be by itself and be perfect, because you can gain back the models by itself. Really, okay, you need to roll the 4+, but more models have you lost, easier it will be to make them come back. So amazing. I love such unit as it is. I love the skeletons, and I really think to bring them quite a lot on the battlefield, because they're even more interesting. Then had the Sepulchral Guard. This it's a unit that finally it's usable, because there has been a time when this unit was the only one not playable that would come from Underworld, and now finally it is. This it's a unit that has seen some minor adjustment, but really quite interesting. About the wound roll now are all on a 3+, so much better. This it's a unit that has all the models being we having 2 wounds, and it's quite important because now it's more resilient and save on 6+, so worse than a normal skeleton. It's still 4 inch of movement. It has 7 models. Remember that there is one model that is the Sepulchral Warden that has 3 wound as characteristic, and at the start of the hero phase, if this model is on the battlefield, you can turn the 3 slain models to this unit. So it's self-sufficient, really quite good. Remember that it's summonable anyway, so you can replenish anyway from other sources. So this unit is much more sustainable than before, that it had only 1 wound, and so it was problematic. Then it has fracturing speed. You can re-roll charge rolls for this unit. In addition, the unit is eligible to fight in the combat phase if it is within 6 inch of an enemy unit instead of 3 inch. So it means that even if it doesn't charge, it can still try to be brought in close combat. And it can move an extra 3 inch when it pile in. In the end, it has also serving the death if the modified hit roll for an attack made with this unit is 6, that attack score 2 hits on the target instead of 1. Make a wound roll and save roll for each of it. This is like having Death Method of Wild King always available, so amazing, because it's not as great as the Death Rattle Skeletons to be able to be self-sustainable, but still it's something that can bring quite a lot, because still has a lot of wounds, a lot of attacks, and can be replenished, so it's nice. Now it's at least playable, so it's something that I consider to bring in your army. And remember that you can gain also the battle trait bonuses based on the dynasty or the legion that you insert this in, so gain also something additional bonuses added. And now we have King Morlock Vernon and its sons, but I'll talk about before King Morlock Vernon. This is as profile a classical Viking. It's the same, so much that it has also the Viking keyword. It's sunnable, so at least you can make it come back, and it's quite nice this, because as a Viking you have this model that can be made come back. As profile about the weapon, it's the same of a Viking. It has still the beheading strike, so also this, if the modified roll for an attack made with a baleful tomb blade is 6, the attack cause 2 mortal wounds to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts, so amazing. Deadly command, so once per turn this unit can issue a command to a friendly the Sons of Vernon unit without a command point being spent. So also this, it's amazing. This model, it's amazing. It has also Undying Dynasty. At the start of the combat phase, roll a dice for each slay model from a friendly the Sons of Vernon unit wholly within 12 inch of this unit. On a 4+, you can return one slay model to that unit. So it's nice to replenish the Sons of the Vernon, but you have to at least to have one of such Sons still alive and wholly within 12 inch of such models. Remember that you take this unit separately, but pay the same, so they can move separately, but you pay for the same time for the king and the Sons. And now had the Sons of Vernon. This it's a unit that it's quite problematic to choose if it's valid or not, because the models are amazing, it's sunnable, and it's important because it means that they can be made come back. It's 2 wounds for each of such model and save 4+, so they can resist much more than a normal cave guard. Movement 6 inch, so they're even faster than the King Morlock itself. And remember that it has the real problem, it has only 4 models inside. Okay, one of them has 4 wounds, so technically you can last quite long, and you have anyway the Undying Dynasty from the King Morlock that can replenish, and it is made in each combat phase, so at least you have both turns available. But still, it's quite a problem about the amount of models that you have. They can be hidden quite nice, but at the same time there are quite small amount of models, and you can't improve them. You can't have a reinforcement about such models because they are all named. Then we had that they have cursed weapon. If the modified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit is 6, then the attack causes 1 mortal wound to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts. It has shield up. Once per turn at the start of the combat phase, you can say that this unit will form a shield wall. If you do so, this unit has a characteristic of 3+ instead of 4+ until the end of the phase. However, if you do so, this unit cannot pile in moves in that phase. So I think that if you charge in a good way, it's quite nice. And it has Canny Strike, that at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice. And on a 2+, that unit cannot make piling move in that phase. And it's good because you can prevent the unit to make a sort of embracing your unit or trying to move out, and so try to make that the unit can survive more. Still, this unit has always the same real problem, only 4 models. Okay, summonable, but you can recover such models only once, and so it's not so great. At the same time, they are amazing models, so try eventually and see what you can gain. Then we can see about Dentalos the Exile and the Exiled Dead, but before we start with Dentalos the Exile, that first of all, remember it's a vampire. Sincerely, at the beginning I thought that it was a Deathmage, because it was treated like one, but it's a vampire. And as a vampire, it's almost the same profile, but better and worse at the same time, because it has 6 wound and a save of 4+, so gain the 1 wound and a worse save. It moves 6 inch. And it has 2 profiles, so it has both the melee weapons, that it's worse than the normal vampire, worse in some way, because it has 3 attacks instead of 5, it hit on 3, wound on 2, range 2, and D3 damage, so it's particular as one, but it has also the missile weapons, that it has a range of 18 inch, 2 attacks, hit on 4, wound on 2, range 2, 1 damage. So it's really quite nice. It's a wizard, so you can attempt to cast 1 spell in your hero phase and attempt to unbind 1 spell in the enemy hero phase. It has Angus, so it can heal as the other vampires. It has Cracking Field, so it has a ward of 5+. So it's quite nice because it has a better than the Telfast Minions one. we had the terrible dynamism at the end of the battle shock phase. If a friendly dead exiled dead unit is within 6 inches of this unit, you can return one slay model to that unit. So quite nice. We had channeled dynamism, so that this is a spell that has a casting value of 3 and casting value of 3. It's almost impossible to miss this one, other than failing completely the spell, miscasting it. And the range of 6 inches is actually cast. Pick one friendly the exiled dead unit wholly within the range and visible to the caster until your next hero phase. That unit can run and still charge later in that turn. So quite nice. The abilities are all related about the exiled dead that we see right now, but if you go to see the vampire itself, it's quite worth, because in close combat it's nice, and if you go to see about the mystery weapon, it's nice, and the way is still without any problem and normal vampire, so it's intriguing. And now we go to see about the exiled dead, because you have to combine both of them to have the real effect of such one that, remember, you buy together and then move separately. And then we had the exiled dead. Here we have a lot to say about such unit. First of all, it's not summonable, so you can't make it come back. Pay attention about once destroyed, don't come back anything. It's Deadwalker, and here I'm quite curious about being in a Virkos Dynasty, because technically you should be able to make the models be added to such unit. So I think that will be a fuck, because remember that you can include such unit in any army of the Dynasty and Legends, and you gain the battle traits, so technically you can gain also from this. So okay, then we go to see about the profile, that is 2 wounds and no save when the zombies has 1 wound and 6+. It has bravery 8. It's the first time that I see a undead unit that it does not have 10 as bravery, but okay. And if you go to see about the profile, we can see a lot of different attacks for the different type of models. So each mod has technically almost a name, so nice. And we have also the amazing and unique zombie champion. Ole! It's a model that I was dreaming to have, and now have a zombie champion. Really, that is Prentice Markov. It's the unity champion and has a wound characteristic of 3, so it's even bigger than the other ones, and add 1 to casting and unbinding rolls for a friendly Dentalus the Exile if its unit include the Prentice Markov. And just to notice, it doesn't say that there is a range, so you can even hide such unit on the battlefield, and that vampire, Dentalus, will gain the bonus. Then it has dynamic cage. If the modified hit roll for an attack made with a Narcos electric weapon is 6, the target suffers 1 mortal wound and the attack sequence, and do not make the wound and save rolls. So about this, you have to remember that are Prentice Markov, Regulus, Bolt, Vash, Icon, and Coil, and the Prince Markov is armed with a bonesaw. The Regulus is armed with a pitted Albert. Bolt, Vash, Ion, and Cold are each armed with an arco electric weapon. So we have 4 models that are armed with such weapon eventually. And I have Cracking Field. While this unit is wholly within 9 inches of a friendly Dentalus the Exile, Bolt, Vash, Ion, and Coil has a ward of 5+. Here you have to pay attention, because it's only such models in all the unit that has the word of 5+, not all the models. So you have to really remember which ones are which. You can't simply decide which one to remove and so on. You have to pay attention which one has the word. Technically, finally, you have the Deathless Minion 6+, but some of them will have a better one. So it's really something that you have to notice. And remember that the only way to make them come back is the terrible dynamism of Exile, the Dentalus the Exile, and it has anyway at the end of the battle phase 1 model. So it's really a complicated unit, this one, and it's still interesting, at least. I'm not so sure if I'd ever play such unit combined with Dentalus or not, but it's funny. I think that in army that it's really related, and I think it may be a Virkos one, about that the Workers Zombie and so on. It will be quite good to see such type of army, because it's a way to have a sort of mercenary or so on that it's related about the zombie and have all related about such. So quite peculiar. And I have Prince Duval, and it's the Crimson Court. I want to remember you that I made the unboxing about such unit because I love these models. They are amazing. But we go to see about first Prince Duval and then the Crimson Court so that you can analyze. Prince Duval as profile is the same as a classic Vampire Lord. So it's a simple one. We have that it's a wizard that can attempt to cast one spell in your hero phase and bind one spell in the enemy hero phase. It has the hunger as all the vampires. And then test the abilities. Come then amuse us. At the start of the combat phase, if this unit and any friendly the Crimson Court models are within 3 inches of the same enemy unit, your opponent must pick up one of the following effects to apply until the end of that phase. The first one, improve the range characteristic of the unit possessed blade by 1. So it's nice because it gains range 2 eventually. The other one is this unit can be picked as the target of attacks made with melee weapons, so it's untouchable, really. And I don't think that no one will ever choose the second effect. So, and then we had the Friendish Lure. Friendish Lure is a spell that has a casting value of 5 and a range of 6. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the cast. Add 1 to the hit roll and wound roll for attacks that target that unit until your next hero phase. This is quite nice because it makes that you can make benefit of such spell every unit that you taken. So the problem is the range that is small, it's only 6 inches, but at the same time, if you are accompanied by other units from your army, you can gain quite a lot because being able to add 1 to hit and wound roll, it's not bad at all, and it applies to every unit because it targets that enemy unit, so quite nice. And then have the Crimson Court. About this unit, I want to remember you that they are vampire, but they are not heroes, so it's a unit of vampires, similar to what we've seen about the Blood Knight. But when we think about this, remember that there are 3 models. 2 of these has 3 wounds. Instead, the Gorak the Enforcer has 4 wounds. They have a save of 4+, because they technically are the Trolls, and a movement of 6 inches. This unit has quite a lot of nice amount of attacks and possibility to do damages. It has hunger, so you can replenish a model, but remember that once that the model is slain, it's lost. You can't make it come back to life thanks to the hunger. So this is quite a problem because you have only Duval and this unit that is of 3 models. They're nice, but it's a problem because you can't control them quite good. They have vampiric agility. When this unit makes a move, it can pass across terrain feature in the same manner as they use as fly. So it's nice because technically you can hide, move by passing the terrain feature, and so try to assault the different units and so on. But at the same time, it's not so great in the movement, and okay, you can do such because you can hide good because they are simple models. But sincerely, I think to use such unit separately, other than you want to use Prince Duval because it's spell or so on. And I don't find it so great, this one, because I prefer to use the models as other models, as Vampire Lord or so on, so to personalize. Using this as the Crimson Court with these rules, it's a bit not so great. So we have to pay a bit of attention about what we want to do, because it's amazing, it's beautiful, but it's worth you have to decide about. And then we can see about the points. I had to thank the AoS Coach because it has made a lot of calculation about the different points before that I had to do this. And really, seeing this, I have some trouble because we have a lot of amazing units that have seen a decrease on point. About the Necromancy, we have 40 point decreasing, and sincerely, I think that it's okay because it has been decreased about the, I can say, amazingness of such models. So decreasing point, it's okay. Radukar the Beast, it's anyway still quite heavy as cost, but it's better than before, so nice. Radukar the Wolf, I don't think that I'd never play it, so okay. Vampire Lord, a decreasing point, it's okay, sincerely. The Virkos Bloodborne, I think that they are nice, so I think that you should take the option about taking them. Moreover, if you are going to play with the Virkos Dynasty. Manfred has seen a decreasing point that it's okay, sincerely. I don't think that it's so great, but it's okay. What makes me suspecting is that the Vulcan zombies and the Corpse Guard has seen a decrease on point. And they're better than before, technically. So, okay. The Skeleton has seen an increase on point, but if you think about that they can be, if more that include them, better they are, I think that it's nice. The Blastiker Paran can see an amazing increase on point. Essentially, I don't think that it was worth before and not even now. About the Common Throne, that it's, I repeat, one of my favorite. It's decreasing point, and so it's completely welcome because I want to play two anyway. Card Ezekiel has seen a decrease on point, and sincerely, I think that one maybe I'll include in an army eventually of Virkos Dynasty because I think that it's nice. Belladama Volga has seen a decrease on point, and sincerely, okay. It's something that anyway you can use even if it's not as good as before. Nagash and increase on point that, okay, sincerely I don't play Nagash, so I don't care. Mortis Engine is good on point, and it's a bit of pity, but at least it's better than the Parakin Seeker. So here you have to think, because Mortis Engine, I think that two of them should be to have a playable list rooster with those units inside. And about the others, sincerely, Prince Tuval, the Crimson Court, I don't see the need to the increase on point, sincerely. Prince Vordrai, okay, but I don't care too much. Neferata, it's nice, and anyway, increase of point, it's perfectly accepted. The Tarot I don't see the need, but anyway, they added the attacks to it, so I think that it's justifiable. The Sepulchral Guard, they improved, so now at least they are worth the price. Togilus the Chamberlain, I think that it's amazing model, so it's worth. The Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, a small amount of increasing, so it's okay, no problem. The Vargeist, sincerely, the increase on point, okay, because they are a bit better, but it's not so great, so it's not a problem. Watch Captain Elgrim, sincerely, I think that it was not okay to do such. As for the Viking and the Viking on Skeleton Steel, that okay, are better than before, but not so good to see such a great amount of increase on point. The Zombie Dragon, it's much improved, so it's okay. Lao Kawai, sincerely, okay, it's nice anyway, but it doesn't change too much. Lady Annika, sincerely, I don't see the reason why, other than technically you should have a Vampire Lord, and this is quite competitive. Kritza the Rat Prince, it has a quite increase of point, but it's a summoner. It's the only summonable vampire, other than they changed lately, so it's good. Kozra the Grey Keeper, it's good, but not so good, sincerely. The Felbats can be amazing, really. So this increase of point, I think that it's perfectly justified, because it's something that you really had to think about do. The Black Knights are much better than before. Sincerely, I would have preferred at least a rand basic one, but okay. The Black Knights, okay, sincerely, I don't see why, but anyway, they're still playable totally. So we have quite a lot of interesting things. Sincerely, the Askurgan Two Blades could be used, but I'm not so sure if I want to use them. So it's something that you have to think about. The Vaskri and the Vampire Lord has seen the same amount of points as the Graveguard, as the King Morkak Verlon and its unit. Sincerely, I think that it's nice, but I'm not sure that I'll play with it. The Construction Negard then okay, or you want to create a Vulcan army that is related about the zombie. Otherwise, it's valid only if you play with the Wolf. So it's nice, but not so great. So Ilvia Volga, it's amazing. So if you want to play Ilvia Volga, here you have something that the monster has to be far away from that model, and it's nice. So we can see that it's at the end quite balanced. Sincerely, if I see what I play usually, I see a quite good degrees of points that it's compensating in some other size, but it's something that you can really gain quite a lot, and you can personalize a lot your roosters. Anyway, the points could be changed in the future, so it's not something that you have to go crazy about, because an update is always available for the points in the future. So here, as it is, I think that they are really quite nice. Eventually, remember that you have as Alice the Flesh Eater Kurz and the Night Hound, and so about such unit, you are really to think about what you want to gain as allies. Sincerely, I don't need the allies in such army, but still they are available, so if you need them, there are. So,
from deynonmod, it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again to the next time.